Chapter 1627. Patter. Bai Xiaowen's palm pressed against the head of the Deinonychus. The memory fragments obtained are unexpectedly few. It seems that the saying that the brains of dinosaurs are only the size of walnuts is very reasonable. Bai Xiaowen narrowed his eyes and browsed through the memory fragments of the Deinonychus. Most of them were scenes of predation, mating, and so on. To Bai Xiaowen, not only were they meaningless, but they were also eyesores. Fortunately, Bai Xiaowen browsed to the end and found a useful memory. The vision of the Deinonychus was based on black and red. It was a bit like the picture under the lens of a thermal imager. Things with heat showed red, and things without heat showed black. A blood-red, domineering giant dinosaur overlord let out a series of roars. Below it was a group of Deinonychus. Needless to say, this giant dinosaur overlord was giving orders to these Deinonychus. However, Bai Xiaowen could not know the specific content of the roars and the mental fluctuations in the roars just by flipping through the memory fragments. He could only guess. After the roars ended, the group of Deinonychus began to move and rushed in the same direction. Along the way, they did not hunt other beasts when they encountered them. Their goal was very clear. Bai Xiaowen gave up control of the Deinonychus, and the latter immediately died. Bai Xiaowen pondered for a moment. It seemed that the organizational structure of the dinosaur society was more rigorous than he had imagined. He originally thought that these dinosaurs were behemoths from the barbaric era and did not have a sense of community. Now, he could basically conclude that these Deinonychus were ordered by a dinosaur overlord to appear in groups and carry out a large-scale search. The target of this search was probably the hundreds of human evolvers that appeared on this dinosaur planet. It might even be Bai Xiaowen himself. The giant dinosaur overlord naturally did not know Bai Xiaowen, but it was very likely that it was instructed by Atli Lanthor and handed the search mission to these Deinonychus to carry out. If that was the case, Atli Lanthor must have not only given orders to this dinosaur overlord. They must be searching for Bai Xiaowen through the power of the various groups of dinosaurs. Not only Bai Xiaowen, but the other human evolvers would also be affected. In the eyes of these dinosaurs, all human evolvers were monsters with 2 legs. As for their specific appearance, there was no way to identify them, so they were all on the hunt list. Looks like it won't be long before the entire dinosaur planet erupts into chaos. Bai Xiaowen was a little worried. His little buddies were still training on the dinosaur planet. He did not know if they would be affected. However, Bai Xiaowen had no other choice. Although everyone had prepared a GPS device for the rendezvous in advance, the detection range was too small, and the dinosaur planet was too big. If his companions also went to the gathering point of spiritual energy, there was a possibility that they would encounter each other. However, if they chose to follow their hearts and not look for the convergence point of spiritual power, but only train near the space nodes they entered, it would be very difficult for them to meet. Of course, in this case, the possibility of them encountering danger was relatively low. Even if they encounter danger, they could escape to the secret realm portal of the meteorite circle in the Wuya region through their corresponding space nodes. Bai Xiaowen killed the 3 Deinonychus. Because the array isolated sound and spiritual energy fluctuations, it did not attract the attention of the other Deinonychus. Bai Xiaowen also put the corpses of the 3 Deinonychus into his storage bracelet to avoid being discovered by the other dinosaurs. He then climbed up a big tree, converted his spiritual sense to the antenna mode, and extended it in a single direction to a distance of 15 kilometers away. Then, he airdropped at a fixed point at the limit of distance and used the teleportation spell. Bai Xiaowen's figure disappeared in place, replaced by a ghoul archer. After more than 10 seconds, the ghoul archer also disappeared directly, recalled by Bai Xiaowen from a distance. Not long after Bai Xiaowen left, 2 other Deinonychus passed by. They sniffed doubtfully. The smell of blood in the air, as well as the smell of a foreign species, made them quickly raise their guard. Then, they continued to search, but the smell was cut off near the big tree where Bai Xiaowen used the teleportation spell. The 2 Deinonychus looked at each other doubtfully. This was the reason Bai Xiaowen used the teleportation spell to leave this forest, to cut off the trail of the Deinonychus that was tracking him. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Bai Xiaowen's figure jumped up and down between the branches of the trees. Using the shade of the trees, he hurried on his way. At this moment, there were pterosaurs flying at low altitudes, whining as they swept past the treetops, bringing with them powerful gusts of wind. Bai Xiaowen felt that these pterosaurs were also looking for him, looking for a two-legged foreign species like him. Suddenly, several strong spiritual energy fluctuations came from the front. Bai Xiaowen's spiritual sense tensed up as he quickly scanned the area. The two evolvers were hurriedly fleeing when the sound of heavy and hurried footsteps came from behind them. It was actually two huge tyrannosauruses that were close to 10 meters tall and 20 meters long. They knocked over trees as they chased after them. Tyrannosaurus rex. These two huge tyrannosauruses had thin forelimbs and abnormally strong hind limbs. Their bodies were incomparably sturdy, their heads were huge, and their red eyes flickered with an ominous glint. They were the Tyrannosaurus rex that appeared in many sci-fi movies. After closing in, Bai Xiaowen's eye of evolution swept over the two Tyrannosauruses and discovered that they were both level 18 leaders. However, their attributes were much stronger than the previous leader, the toothless pterosaur, and their spiritual energy was about the same. He didn't know if this counted as a rare leader. Perhaps it was because the Tyrannosaurus rex wasn't as proficient in aerial combat as the toothless pterosaur, so they had stronger physical attributes to make up for it. These two evolvers were also Chang Yu's dogs. They were just scouts who were investigating the gathering point of spiritual energy. They didn't expect to alarm these two high-level leader-level Tyrannosauruses, who were chasing after them relentlessly. The key was that the group of pterosaurs in the sky was also disturbed. They didn't dare to fly at high altitudes to avoid the pursuit of the Tyrannosauruses. Otherwise, they would become targets for the pterosaurs. The meat on their bodies added together couldn't even compare to a small herbivorous dinosaur. If the Tyrannosauruses wanted to hunt, they wouldn't be the targets. Bai Xiaowen still felt a little apologetic. After all, these two people were most likely implicated and unlucky because he had angered the descendant of God, Atli-Lan Thor. If you die, I will be responsible for collecting your corpses, Bai Xiaowen said silently. After thinking about it, he added in his heart, if there is a corpse to collect. Chapter 1628. In fact, Bai Xiaowen felt that these two evolvers were very likely to become snacks for the two Tyrannosaurus rexes. Even their corpses would not be left behind, so there might not be any need to collect them, f*ck. I'm not cursing you, don't trick me. Bai Xiaowen was dumbfounded. The two evolvers actually ran in the direction where he was hiding. It seemed that they wanted to use the terrain of the dense forest to cover their escape. The two Tyrannosaurus rexes naturally followed closely behind. Moreover, one of the Tyrannosaurus rexes took a deep breath. Its nostrils suddenly turned red, and sparks burst out. Bai Xiaowen's eye of evolution could see a large amount of spiritual power flowing along the thick meridians in the Tyrannosaurus rex's body and rapidly converging toward its throat. Boom! Crimson flame shot out like sharp arrows. The Tyrannosaurus rexes used its strong lung capacity to inhale a large amount of air, forming a compression cannon in its throat, and spurting out a large amount of flame energy, causing its spitting attack to become a move that combined physical impact and fire damage. After a large number of flame arrows hit the tree, they directly destroyed it and then began to burn. Bai Xiaowen was not surprised that the Tyrannosaurus rexes could spit fire. After all, the divine descendant, Atlan Thor, could use a spell-like innate ability like gushing spring, so it was normal for the Tyrannosaurus rexes to be able to spit fire. The forest in front of him instantly turned into a sea of fire. This time, Bai Xiaowen's concealment no longer existed. His invisibility was only restraining his spiritual power fluctuations and relying on his superior priority to make the enemy unable to sense his spiritual power aura. Under the premise of restraining spiritual power fluctuations, hiding among the leaves could achieve an effect similar to invisibility. However, after the cover of the leaves was burned, Bai Xiaowen's figure would be exposed to the Tyrannosaurus rex's vision, and of course, he would also be exposed to the two evolvers' vision. Whoosh! Bai Xiaowen had no choice but to hand over another ghoul archer. He used a combination of fixed-point airdrop and teleportation to disappear into the fire. Bai Xiaowen could have teleported a few kilometers away to avoid the battle, but he didn't do so. Instead, he teleported to the back of a stone hill on the side. Am I getting carried away, or is the Tyrannosaurus Rex too weak to lift its blade? Why do I feel like these two Tyrannosauruses are only SOSO? Bai Xiaowen touched his chin and silently checked the data from the Eye of Evolution. T-Rex, Boss Level 18, Race, Ancient Dragon/Brutal Dragon, Attributes, Strength 200, Agility 135, Constitution 180, Spirit 75, Health, 98% Spiritual Energy Value, 30/50ths. The stats of the other Tyrannosaurus Rex were about the same as this one, and its health wasn't high either. The low health points should be due to the two Evolvers' counterattack, which caused a small amount of damage to the T-Rex. Bai Xiaowen compared his own strength. He was now level 14, and his strength, agility, and constitution were all around 100 points. Compared to the T-Rex, there was a difference in his stats, but the main difference was in his strength and constitution. These 2 points were definitely the T-Rex's advantage as an ancient dragon. The most important thing was his spiritual energy value. Bai Xiaowen's spiritual energy value was 2,660, while the T-Rex's was just over 3,000. The difference wasn't that big. Bai Xiaowen even wanted to kill the T-Rex. Of course, he had to choose a suitable opponent to train his strength and combat mastery. This level 18 boss Tyrannosaurus Rex was quite suitable. As for the two of them, it didn't matter. Bai Xiaowen still had an army of summoned creatures. Among them, Sheiji was a level 15 cross-type lord. These two Tyrannosauruses had come from the direction of the first spirit energy gathering point. In other words, the monster occupying the first spirit energy gathering point was most likely an ancient dragon of the Tyrannosaurus species. Fighting with them could also target their innate abilities and gather some precious information. The only thing that made Bai Xiaowen hesitate was the two post-humans. He didn't want them to see the scene of him fighting the T-Rex alone. Should he wait until the T-Rex killed the two post-humans before making his move? Boom! Another wave of flame arrows flew over. The two post-humans were trapped in the fire. They relied on their spiritual energy to protect their bodies and not be burned to death. However, their health points were also dropping rapidly. Their speed of escape was also getting slower and slower. Seeing the two of them struggling miserably in the sea of fire, Bai Xiaowen felt a little uncomfortable. Should he just sit and watch two humans get killed by dinosaurs? If it was within his ability and he could save them? This was different from the situation when he encountered Atlilan Thor. He definitely couldn't resist the power of the descendants of God. He could only run for his life. In a situation where the other post-humans were bound to die, Bai Xiaowen didn't have any psychological burden when he used them to scout the way and eliminate danger for him. However, Bai Xiaowen was confident that he could kill the T-Rex in front of him. In order to hide his identity as the White Phoenix Overlord, he sat and watched these two post-humans get eaten by dinosaurs. Bai Xiaowen couldn't bear to see this happen. This trace of pity wasn't because he was a saint. As a fellow human, seeing other humans being ravaged by monsters, it was a kind of empathy hidden in the depths of human nature. From a rational point of view, it's best to wait for them to die before making a move, right? This can prevent my identity from being exposed. Using dinosaurs to kill witnesses, isn't it a basic operation for me? Bai Xiaowen got up and closed his eyes. The two post-humans escaped the fire with great difficulty. However, they were already severely injured by the continuous burning of the flames. With their speed greatly reduced, they were unable to escape the pursuit of the dinosaurs. Soon, the two T-Rexes forced them into a corner. Behind them was a huge rock that was more than 10 meters tall. With nowhere to retreat, the two of them trembled. A trace of human-like ridicule appeared in the blood-red eyes of the T-Rexes. This was proof of their intelligence. Then, one of the T-Rexes opened its huge mouth, creak. Rocks and dirt flew everywhere, but there was no blood. A graceful black figure stood on a large tree dozens of meters away. One in each hand, one posthumans in each hand. It was Sheiji. The two posthumans suddenly opened their eyes. They were stunned. First, they looked at Sheiji who had saved them. After realizing that it was a corpse puppet, they looked around. We're saved. Who is it? On the stone hill, Bai Xiaowen stood up straight and looked at the two T-Rexes. I really can't be as rational as a machine. Or rather, as cold as a machine. Bai Xiaowen took a deep breath and reflected on himself. Emotions were the weakness of humans. Bai Xiaowen had long known that this sentence was correct. However, Bai Xiaowen still couldn't ignore the drive of emotions in the depths of his heart. Forget it. After all, I've already thought of a way out after my identity is exposed. The current situation allows me to be a little willful for once. Bai Xiaowen shook his head and stopped reflecting on the influence of emotions on himself. True inner force slowly rose. He faced the four blood-red eyes of the two T-Rexes. Chapter 1629. The two Tyrannosaurus Rexes slowly approached Bai Xiaowen. Patter, patter. Sheiji, who was standing on a tree branch, casually hung the two evolvers on the branch. Then, she floated down and went to support Bai Xiaowen. The two evolvers were a little nervous as they looked at the confrontation between humans and beasts in front of them. We thought it was a team, so he dared to come and save us. In the end, it's only two people. One of the evolvers, who was thin and small and whose body was completely burned by the flames and had a lot of burn marks, muttered. To be exact, it's only one person. The other burly evolver added, although he should be very strong since he can control a mid-level lord-level corpse puppet, facing two high-level leaders at the same time, is still very difficult. We can't help much now. We can only kneel and thank him for his great kindness. The thin evolver took out a medicine bottle that was rippling with a green glow. First, treat the injuries on your body and recover some of your combat power. Then, we'll see if we can be of any use. That's right. In the territory of Great Xia, there are no cowards who would abandon their benefactor and run away, the burly evolver said in a low voice. However, Bai Xiaowen did not listen to these voices. Like the Tyrannosaurus Rexes, he ignored the two heavily injured elite evolvers hanging on the branch. Strength was the best camouflage. Spiritual imprint, Bai Xiaowen lifted a rock in his palm and shattered it into 4 pieces. He imprinted a spiritual imprint on each piece of rock and then threw it to the surrounding area. This was a preparation in advance for the teleportation technique. When he encountered an attack that was difficult to dodge, Bai Xiaowen could switch positions with one of the rocks that had been imprinted with a spiritual imprint. However, these rocks were not spiritual items that Bai Xiaowen had prepared in advance. The spiritual imprint imprinted on them could only last for half an hour at most. So, after half an hour, they could no longer be used. At present, this combination was still somewhat inconvenient. After the rubble fell to the ground, the position of the stone was fixed, which meant that the special effect of Flying Thunder God was useless. Enemies who knew about Bai Xiaowen's background could resolve Bai Xiaowen's early arrangements by destroying the stones with spiritual imprints in advance. Fortunately, Bai Xiaowen still had summoned creatures that could be airdropped to make up for this shortcoming. However, if he did so, the summoned creatures that would take the blame for Bai Xiaowen would also be sacrificed in this battle. The number of summoned creatures was not infinite. This method of weakening one's own combat power and using one's own summoned creatures as a shield was just a covert way to reduce losses. It would be great if he could add runes of spiritual power to the basic sword rune. The basic sword talisman was a level 1 Taoist magic art. It was the foundation of the talisman Taoism of the Shanqing school. To put it simply, they would write spirit talismans by hand, and the spirit talismans would transform into swords to attack. As a Tier 1 Dao technique, it was not very powerful. On the basis of the Tier 1 sword talismans, the masters of the Shanqing school added other runes and designed combination sword talismans. The power of the combination sword talismans was incomparable to that of the Tier 1 sword talismans. For example, the triple combination sword talisman with 3 runes was a Tier 2 Dao technique. Not only did its lethality increase, but it also had additional effects due to the different runes added. For example, the Fire Sword Talisman, Water Sword Talisman, Combo Sword Talisman, and so on. After adding more runes, it could become a quadruple combination sword talisman, Tier 2 Dao Technique, a quintuple combination sword talisman, Tier 3 Dao Technique, and so on. As long as one's strength was sufficient, there was no limit to the mystery of the talisman Taoism. Of course, the more layers of the combination and the greater the power, the higher the consumption of spiritual power. This was determined by the star level of the skill. A quintuple combination sword talisman was equivalent to a Tier 3 Dao Technique. A single use would consume 300 to 500 points of spiritual power. Although the consumption would decrease as one's proficiency level increased, from the proficiency level to the proficient level, no matter how much it decreased, it was still quite a high consumption for a mid-level hero or even a lord. Bai Xiaowen did not need to be so complicated. He only needed to create the double combination sword talisman and add his spiritual power imprint as a rune to the basic sword talisman. The double combination sword talisman was still a Tier 1 Dao technique, so it did not consume much of his true core force. As long as he succeeded, Bai Xiaowen would be able to control the sword talisman and use it to switch positions anytime and anywhere. Furthermore, he could use the special effect of the Flying Thunder God to switch positions with the moving sword talisman. As for now, it was still a little lacking. Thud thud thud, Bai Xiaowen had just thrown out the gravel when one of the Tyrannosaurus Rex charged at Bai Xiaowen at high speed. The other Tyrannosaurus Rex was blocked by Sheiji. I didn't use the flame arrow to test it. Is it because this kind of wide-range attack requires some time to reorganize? Bai Xiaowen was prepared and moved sideways with the tip of his foot. His agility was now over 100, and coupled with the explosion of his rich true core force, his speed was not just for show. After the Tyrannosaurus Rex's charge missed like a train, it suddenly twisted its sturdy buttocks and swung its tail. An invisible shadow of a whip lashed out horizontally. So fast. Bai Xiaowen did not have time to dodge. This charge and tail swing was the Tyrannosaurus Rex's hunting instinct that had been tempered through countless trials and tribulations. It was unbelievably fast. Bai Xiaowen immediately used the switch position and switched positions with the first piece of gravel made of spiritual power. With a terrifying hum, that piece of gravel made of spiritual power was smashed into dust by the Tyrannosaurus Rex's huge tail. Bai Xiaowen's heart skipped a beat. In just one exchange, he had used the switch position Dao technique. The switch position Dao technique was a level 2 Dao technique, and it consumed a lot of true core force with each use. With Bai Xiaowen's current mastery level, it consumed about 140 points of true core force, which was equivalent to about 5% of his true core force. It seemed that 20 uses would deplete his true core force, but in reality, that was not the case. This was because true core force could be recovered through the circulatory cycle transportation, which was the internal breathing cycle of an evolver. The more abundant the remaining true core force in the body, the easier it was to push the circulatory cycle transportation, and the faster the recovery speed. Under the condition of 95% true core force, 10 circulatory cycles was enough to restore it to full in a few dozen seconds. However, in the face of an unending stream of powerful pressure, Bai Xiaowen had to continuously consume his true core force to use the switch position technique to dodge. The remaining true core force would become less and less, and the recovery speed would become slower and slower. It was a taboo for evolvers to use up their true core force. That would be equivalent to a lamp that had run out of oil. It would require a large amount of time, up to 12 hours, to recover. In layman's terms, evolvers could hold on for a long time in a battle of low intensity, possibly up to several days or even more, and they would not run out of true core force. However, in a battle of high intensity, when facing a strong enemy of the same level, with frequent use of big moves, an evolver would often be on the verge of exhaustion after a few dozen or even a few minutes of battle. Chapter 1630. Bai Xiaowen stared at the Tyrannosaurus Rex. The Tyrannosaurus Rex's spiritual power was most concentrated in its head. That means the head is the Tyrannosaurus Rex's weak point. This sentence seems to be nonsense. Bai Xiaowen mocked himself and continued with his previous strategy. He dodged the Tyrannosaurus Rex's attacks, and if he could not dodge, he would use position shift to open up the distance and then use Thunder Palm to attack. If Bai Xiaowen had summoned all of his other summoned creatures, the battle would have been a little easier. However, his original intention for this battle was to gather information on the Tyrannosaurus dinosaurs and hone his combat mastery, so he didn't do so. Sheiji was dealing with the other Tyrannosaurus Rex more easily than Bai Xiaowen. She was a level 15 lord with agility as her specialty, and she had also cultivated a unique skill. Although the 7 flashes consumes a lot of spiritual power, the prerequisite skill, inch step, was enough to deal with this kind of close combat. The effect of inch step was instantaneous movement acceleration. The opponent's retina would not be able to capture the movement, only the afterimage. Although this kind of acceleration was not as effective as the teleportation effect of position shift, inch step consumed less spiritual power. According to Bai Xiaowen's observation, every time Sheiji used inch step, it only consumed about 50 spiritual power. It was a proper 1-star skill, and it was probably trained to the proficient level, which was why the consumption was so low. Bai Xiaowen felt that he should also pay attention to this kind of close combat skill. Although the Tyrannosaurus Rex could not hit Sheiji, Sheiji could not do much to it either. After all, the Tyrannosaurus Rex's skin was extremely tough. Sheiji did not use the invisible blade, which consumed a lot of spiritual power. Instead, she used a blue quality machete that Bai Xiaowen gave her to slash. The result was that only white marks were left on the Tyrannosaurus Rex's skin, and the damage caused was almost negligible. Extremely high physical defense. In this case, invisible blade is not very effective. Bai Xiaowen continued to gather information and thought silently. The invisible blade's penetrative ability was targeted at the protection of spiritual energy. For monsters with tough skin and natural high armor, it was very difficult to use its penetrative ability. Let's change our tactics and coordinate with each other. Our priority is to reduce the enemy's threat. Bai Xiaowen issued this command to Sheiji through their mental connection. After Sheiji dodged another bite from the Tyrannosaurus Rex, she quickly moved to the side and joined up with Bai Xiaowen. As a result, the two Tyrannosauruses gathered together. However, cooperating in battle was more advantageous than fighting alone. Sheiji and Bai Xiaowen's ability to cooperate in battle was much stronger than the two Tyrannosaurus Rex's ability to cooperate. Sheiji was in charge of close-range combat, while Bai Xiaowen was in charge of long-range combat. She cast a weakened version of the lightning strike Dao technique to disrupt the Tyrannosaurus Rex's vision. The two Tyrannosaurus Rex became angrier and angrier. Although they were not injured, they could not fight back. Two deafening roars erupted almost in unison, and the two Tyrannosaurs drew a sharp intake of breath in unison. The two evolvers hanging on the tree cried out almost at the same time, "Be careful, this is the moment." Bai Xiaowen was abnormally calm. Boom! Boom! Two extremely powerful flame arrows were shot out. At this moment, Bai Xiaowen and Sheiji's figures appeared above the two Tyrannosaurus Rexes at the same time. Swoosh! Swoosh! Four invisible blades shot out from their fingertips at almost the same time, stabbing directly at the Tyrannosaurus Rex's blood-red eyes. Splat! Blood splattered everywhere. The two Tyrannosaurus Rexes were blinded in an instant, and they went crazy, biting everywhere. Bai Xiaowen grabbed Sheiji's hand and disappeared in an instant, dodging the Tyrannosaurus Rex's violent counterattack. Bai Xiaowen's idea after changing tactics was to blind the Tyrannosaurus Rexes through coordination, reducing their threat to their side. However, after Sheiji's probing a few times, Bai Xiaowen discovered that the Tyrannosaurus Rex's protection of their eyes was very thorough. Just that thick layer of skin had a very high physical defense. As long as they closed their eyes, they would be able to block Sheiji's blue scimitar. It must be known that this blue scimitar had an A- grade sharpness, yet it was unable to break through the eyelid defense of the Tyrannosaurus Rexes like Sheiji, who was a mid-ranked Lord rank warrior. Of course, this was also because the Tyrannosaurus rexes placed a lot of importance on protecting their eyes, and a considerable portion of their protective spiritual energy was used on their eyes. Their attacking methods also relied on brute force and their advantage in size. Only a small portion of their protective spiritual energy would be used, and their defense against spiritual energy attacks was still very strong. Therefore, Bai Xiaowen deliberately switched to the weakened version of Lightning Strike, which was less powerful and consumed less energy, and continuously exerted mental pressure on the Tyrannosaurus rexes. The weakened version of Lightning Strike was not very powerful, but the sound and visual effects were quite good. After the Tyrannosaurus rexes became frustrated, they discovered that they could not hit the enemy with their sharp teeth and claws, so they naturally chose another method, spell-like innate ability, Flamethrower. This process required a large amount of spiritual energy, and the Tyrannosaurus rex's protective spiritual energy was bound to be greatly weakened. Furthermore, when they attacked, the Tyrannosaurus rexes could not move their heads. This was the opportunity that Bai Xiaowen found. When two Tyrannosaurus rexes used Flamethrower at the same time, an average person would not be able to escape. It was already not bad to be able to withstand the damage of the Flamethrower, not to mention counterattacking. Bai Xiaowen's displacement Dao technique came in handy, and at the same time, he and Sheiji flashed to the location of the second spiritual energy imprint rock, the top of the first hill, and dodged the Flamethrower. After flashing to the top of the hill, the two of them directly jumped down and used Invisible Blade in midair, blinding the eyes of the two Tyrannosaurus rexes. After that, Bai Xiaowen used the third spiritual energy imprint rock to escape from the two Tyrannosaurus rexes' frenzied counterattack. Phew, I didn't expect that carrying a person through displacement transference would consume so much energy. Bai Xiaowen sighed. He carried Sheiji through displacement transference twice, which consumed a total of 780 true inner force, which was equivalent to nearly 400 true inner force per use. It was equivalent to the consumption of a 3-star skill or above. The two Tyrannosaurus rexes rolled around in the field, and the intense pain made them frantically attack everything around them. Even the hill was forcibly destroyed by their brute force. Powerful, powerful, the two evolvers hanging on the branches muttered. The burly evolver suddenly shouted, "Brother, before the Tyrannosaurus rexes calm down, let's quickly escape. Also, can you bring the two of us along? Our Lord will definitely give you a satisfactory gift as thanks." Bai Xiaowen tilted his head. Why should we run? He had already poked the Tyrannosaurus rex's eyeballs out. The skinny evolver shouted, with the Tyrannosaurus rex's self-healing ability, their eyes will recover in a few hours at most. And most importantly, even if they lose their sight for a few hours, they can still continue to fight. Chapter 1631. They can continue fighting even after losing their sight? Bai Xiaowen narrowed his eyes. Could it be that they can also sense spiritual energy waves? Every living creature had their own spiritual energy waves. If they were to be compared to ripples, the weak creature's waves were like leaves falling into water, while the strong creature's waves were like tsunamis. Of course, the stronger and more intelligent the creature was, the better they knew how to control and restrain their own spiritual energy waves. At the same time, they could use their own senses to detect the presence of other spiritual energy waves nearby. No matter if it was a practitioner, sorcerer, or a warrior, they could all sense spiritual energy waves nearby. However, a practitioner's spiritual sense allowed them to sense farther and had more diverse scanning methods. A warrior's intuition was more passive, and their sensing range was narrower. However, sometimes the warning from their intuition was even more unreasonable than spiritual sense. But a beast had the ability to sense spiritual energy waves? That was too illogical. Besides, what was the use of sensing spiritual energy waves? It could only determine the general location of the opponent. It could not accurately see the opponent's every move like a pair of eyes. When the skinny evolver saw that Bai Xiaowen did not seem to believe her, she anxiously raised her voice and shouted, "It's not just their senses. The T-Rex's sense of smell and hearing are very, very sensitive. Even if they don't have eyes, they can still move by relying on their senses, nose, and ears. Right now, they are only temporarily going crazy because of the intense pain. That's why we should leave quickly. A woman? When Bai Xiaowen heard the shrill voice, he was slightly startled. At first, he did not realize that the skinny evolver was a woman. It was probably because he did not pay special attention to her. However, now was not the time to discuss the gender of the other party. Bai Xiaowen was not a sexist. He carefully considered the words of the female evolver. No wonder the two T-Rexes were not at full health when I first saw them. Instead, they were more than 90% healthy. It seems like they were hit in the nose by these two evolvers. Also, dinosaurs don't seem to be a type of wild beast. They are classified as a type of ancient dragon. They have relatively high intelligence and may indeed have the ability to sense spiritual energy waves. It had to be said that the super brain thought a lot. Bai Xiaowen thought of another question. With the strength of these two elite evolvers, how did they obtain such detailed information about the T-Rex? It was as if he had killed more than one Tyrannosaurus Rex. However, this question was temporarily put aside as Bai Xiaowen and Sheiji returned to the battlefield. Perhaps sensing the reappearance of the threat, the two blind Tyrannosauruses stopped their meaningless rampage. The two huge heads with blood flowing from their eyes turned at the same time and looked in the direction of Bai Xiaowen and Sheiji. Then, with a roar, the two Tyrannosaurus Rex strode forward. It seems that the two post-humans were right when they said that Tyrannosaurus Rex's blindness would not affect its ability to fight. This piece of information is very important, Bai Xiaowen thought to himself. Now, I have to verify another piece of information. I will disrupt the Tyrannosaurus Rex's sense of hearing and smell. Wait for an opportunity and attack the nose of one of the Tyrannosauruses. Bai Xiaowen ordered Sheiji through their telepathic connection. Then, Bai Xiaowen took out the 3 Deinonychus corpses that had not been eaten by Butcher in time from his storage ring. While they were still warm, he cut open their hearts and blood. In an instant, a large amount of dinosaur blood splattered on the battlefield. Even Bai Xiaowen and Sheiji's bodies were stained with it. This commotion naturally triggered the attack of the Tyrannosaurus Rex. However, Sheiji had already received the order. She grabbed Bai Xiaowen by the waist and used inch step to instantly accelerate and forcefully escape. The Tyrannosaurus Rex, who had been blinded, sniffed, but the strong smell of blood in the field covered the sense of Bai Xiaowen and Sheiji. Their huge and ferocious heads tilted slightly. Clearly, they were relying on their sense of hearing to search for traces of Bai Xiaowen and Sheiji. However, Bai Xiaowen and Sheiji entered a state of silence. The atmosphere in the field was quiet for a moment. The two post-humans hanging on the tree didn't even dare to breathe. Fortunately, the tree they were hanging on was far from the battlefield. Otherwise, they would have been affected by the battle and died a violent death. The Tyrannosaurus Rex was unable to find Bai Xiaowen through their sense of hearing. Furthermore, their ability to sense spiritual energy fluctuations could only vaguely sense the general direction. They were unable to pinpoint the exact location. Therefore, the two Tyrannosaurus Rex made the safest choice. They used their innate skill, large-range flame arrow, in the general direction they sensed. They took a deep breath. Their huge nostrils rapidly opened because they had inhaled too much air too quickly. A large amount of spiritual energy gathered at the tip of their nostrils. Intense heat quickly formed at the tip of the Tyrannosaurus Rex's swollen nostrils. Now is the time. Bai Xiaowen held Sheiji's hand with his left hand and suddenly opened his right hand. Fixed point airdrop plus position swap, man mode. A ghoul archer appeared above the Tyrannosaurus Rex's swollen nostrils. Then, it was quickly replaced by Bai Xiaowen and Sheiji. 2 formless blades formed at the fingertips of the two. Whoosh! The formless blades shone brightly and deeply embedded themselves into the brittle bones of the Tyrannosaurus Rex's nostrils. In order to pursue lethality, Bai Xiaowen and Sheiji used the formless blades at an extremely close distance. The maximum range of the formless blades was more than 3 meters. It directly pierced through the upper jaw of the Tyrannosaurus Rex and came out from the chin cartilage. There was no blood at the wound. Instead, a large amount of heat waves and blood mist burst out. At the same time, the Tyrannosaurus Rex's ears and eye sockets spurted out heat waves and blood mist. At the same time, there was black smoke and a burnt smell. It was similar to household appliances that had burned out. Bai Xiaowen pulled Sheiji and used the fourth spiritual energy imprint gravel to activate position swap and leave the battlefield. He did this because he was worried that the Tyrannosaurus Rex would violently counterattack when it was seriously injured. The reason was the same as when he quickly retreated after blinding the Tyrannosaurus Rex last time. However, Bai Xiaowen worried too much. The two Tyrannosaurus Rex stood frozen in place like statues. They did not make any moves to counterattack. Then, with two thuds, the two Tyrannosaurus Rex fell to the ground one after another. Could it be? Bai Xiaowen scanned with his Eye of Evolution and found that the health points of the two Tyrannosaurus Rex had fallen to 0. These were level 18 bosses. And they were ancient dragons with rough skin and thick flesh. They were killed in seconds just like that? Bai Xiaowen felt that it was unreal. However, after thinking about it carefully, Bai Xiaowen could understand. The Tyrannosaurus Rex had wanted to activate a large-scale flame arrow. Its nose was where they stored fire energy, and its throat was where they breathed out strong wind pressure. The combination of the two formed a powerful impact and fire damage at the same time. It was similar to Orochi, but much more powerful, a large-scale flame arrow. Therefore, their nose was their vital point. It was even more so when they activated this spell. Chapter 1632. Bai Xiaowen and Sheiji had slashed their noses at the critical juncture before the spell took form. It was probably equivalent to a man being castrated when he was filled with blood. Blood splattering everywhere was not enough to describe how tragic it was. It was not much different from a cannon barrel exploding. The fire energy that had been stored and was waiting to be fired lost its vent, so it naturally backfired on the Tyrannosaurus Rex. Furthermore, it backfired on the Tyrannosaurus Rex, which was the weakest part of its skull. Although a creature like the Tyrannosaurus Rex had evolved a tough skin and sharp claws, as well as offensive spells such as a large-scale flame arrow, the insides of their bodies were still extremely weak. They only relied on a layer of skin for defense. Their brains had suffered full damage from a large-scale flame arrow while they were defenseless. In addition, their spiritual energy had been messed up due to the attack on their vitals. As a result, the two Tyrannosaurus Rex died on the spot. They did not even have the chance to retaliate before they died. After successfully killing the two Tyrannosaurus Rex, Bai Xiaowen was like a writer who suddenly had an inspiration. His thoughts flowed like a fountain. He did not care about the two evolvers hanging from the tree. He sat cross-legged on the ground and replayed the scenes of the battle in his mind, taking stock of his gains from the battle. Sheiji stood to the side and silently protected him. Tactics were indeed important in a head-on battle with a high-ranking leader. When Bai Xiaowen did not summon an army of creatures, his raw strength was weaker than the Tyrannosaurus Rex. However, he was able to counterattack in the end because of his appropriate tactics. Furthermore, Sheiji's combat specialization, swordsmanship specialization, and inch step were all demonstrated in this battle. This was equivalent to a powerful warrior-type instructor personally demonstrating how to dodge and maneuver in battle, and at the same time, how to make use of fleeting opportunities to strike. These demonstrations were more focused on probing the opponent in the first half of the battle. Sheiji did not know how to dodge the Tyrannosaurus Rex's attacks and left white marks on its skin. If it was not a Tyrannosaurus Rex with thick skin and flesh, any other humanoid would have been beaten to a bloody pulp by Sheiji. Bai Xiaowen's insight was as powerful as a video recorder. Especially in the battle just now, he had already recorded Sheiji's battle from the corner of his eye. The instructor's demonstration is not enough. I still need to combine it with the instructor's memory fragments related to the battle mastery to understand it together. Bai Xiaowen continued to sit on the ground with his eyes closed. He chose to share Sheiji's combat mastery and swordsmanship mastery. Then, he combined it with the battle just now and Sheiji's demonstration to experience it. Time ticked by. The two evolved humans had finally recovered from their severe burns, but they did not leave. Instead, They waited for Bai Xiaowen. As Sheiji was guarding by his side, the two of them could not approach him. "Brother, who do you think he is? It doesn't look big, but why is it so powerful?" The skinny female evolved human asked softly. The burly evolver shook his head. "You can't judge an evolver's age by his appearance. Perhaps this is a senior with a long history." Both of them saw Bai Xiaowen's true appearance. This was because Bai Xiaowen had given his all in the battle with the T-Rex, and did not have the energy to maintain his disguise. Bai Xiaowen had considered this point, which was why he was so hesitant to save them. When he made up his mind to save them, Bai Xiaowen immediately removed his disguise, so the two evolvers did not know the relationship between the person in front of them and Black 2. If it's a senior, he should be a high-level evolver, right? But at this stage, only mid-level evolvers below level 16 can enter. Shoo, lower your voice. Don't make assumptions about a senior, especially when he's our savior. Brother, let me take a closer look. This senior is really good-looking. It was already late, and the two evolvers did not dare to light a bonfire, fearing that it would attract the attention of the dinosaurs. Thus, they rested nearby Xiaowen's training spot. On one hand, they could guard against the invasion of the dinosaurs, and on the other hand, they could wait for Bai Xiaowen to wake up. Spirit World's rule notification. You've gained a new understanding of combat, Garen said with a smile. You have a breakthrough in your combat mastery. It is currently level 3, proficient. You have a new understanding of swordsmanship. You have a breakthrough in your swordsmanship mastery. It is currently level 3, entry. Bai Xiaowen sighed and slowly opened his eyes. In the world of evolvers, whether it was a breakthrough in a profession or a breakthrough in a combat mastery, they were not achieved by accumulating proficiency, but by relying on the progress of comprehension. Therefore, when the progress of comprehension was in place, they would naturally have the corresponding combat/swordsmanship skills. In this way, regardless of whether it was level 3 proficiency or level 3 entry, it had already become a standard to judge the strength of an evolver's specialization under the Spirit World's rule. Therefore, in the world of evolvers, the requirements for aptitude were even more stringent. People with mediocre aptitude often put in 10 times the effort, but they could not compare to people with intelligent aptitude who had an epiphany. The reason why Bai Xiaowen's combat mastery skipped levels was that his comprehension was high enough, and he could memory sharing the combat mastery of the powerful souls of the summoned creatures that had fused with him, such as Delifer and Sheiji. It was almost impossible for other evolvers to have a warrior-type profession with a very high meditation mastery, or a magic-type profession with a very high close combat mastery. Only Bai Xiaowen could achieve such a special case. Senior, you are awake. A slightly rough voice sounded. The moment Bai Xiaowen opened his eyes, he saw two evolvers, one strong and one thin. They were guarding nearby, one in front and one behind. When they saw that he had woken up, they came over. Bai Xiaowen waved his hand and stopped Sheiji. He said, "You haven't left yet?" The burly evolver said, "Senior, you must be joking. We are evolvers of the Great Xia territory. We will definitely repay any kindness. How can we just leave like this?" Bai Xiaowen's breathing quickened slightly before he calmed down. There were no ripples on his face, but the waves in his heart were surging. Great Xia territory. Great Xia territory. Xia Feng killed my sister's old enemy? As expected, I wasn't rational enough. If only I had watched the two of them die. I will really regret it if I let my emotions get the better of me. A thought flashed through Bai Xiaowen's mind. A sense of regret flashed through his mind, but Bai Xiaowen quickly suppressed it. It was useless to regret saving the two of them now. Not revealing any flaws was the best plan. As for silencing them, Bai Xiaowen felt that he could not do it. The two of them looked like they had good characters, and he would feel guilty if he killed them. Furthermore, due to the existence of prophet-type evolvers, rashly killing them was not the best plan. If the other party was able to use Soul Recall, one of Qiao Rui's abilities, to summon the souls of the dead or recreate some scenes of the dead before they died, Bai Xiaowen would definitely be exposed if he saw his true appearance. Chapter 1633. Bai Xiaowen quickly changed his way of thinking. Now, whether it's silencing them or leaving, it's not appropriate. Not to mention killing them to silence them, but if he gave them a cold face and refused to communicate with them before leaving, it would be obvious that this senior had some sort of grudge against the Great Xia Kingdom. Basically, Bai Xiaowen's identity as the White Phoenix Lord could not be hidden. There were no more than 5 people on the dinosaur planet who could single-handedly kill 2 high-level Tyrannosauruses. Sheiji was Bai Xiaowen's summoned creature. The others were all top-notch mid-level evolvers in the Star Alliance. Only Bai Xiaowen was a newcomer, so it was easy to guess. Did the White Phoenix Lord have enmity against Great Xia? Xia Feng might know about this. After all, these two were his scouts. Even if they were not his confidants, they were close. Then, Xia Feng would find it strange and think about whether there was any enmity between the two. Under the circumstances where the two had not communicated directly, the enmity could only come from a third party. White Phoenix was currently neutral and had not joined any organization. Therefore, the range of suspicion of a third party would be quickly reduced. If Xia Feng believed that there was a relationship between White Phoenix and Hua Xueli, which was the relationship between Bai Xiaowen and Hua Xueli, then Bai Xiaowen would have no chance of winning if he went all out against White Phoenix. Of course, this was all Bai Xiaowen's speculation based on his intelligence. If he was Xia Feng, he should be able to deduce this. Whether Xia Feng could calculate this was still unknown. However, Bai Xiaowen would not take such a risk and think that the enemy was stupid. Even if the result proved that he was fighting against air, Bai Xiaowen would not lose anything. Since we can't avoid it, then we should actively deal with it. Communicate with these two and use this opportunity to spy on Great Xia and Xia Feng. After changing his mind, Bai Xiaowen's attitude softened. You are evolvers from Great Xia. No wonder you are different from ordinary evolvers. How should I address you two? The burly man said, Senior, we are siblings. I am Jian Hao, and this is my sister Jian Yu. Senior, you can just call me Rat. That's my nickname. Bai Xiaowen's eyes twitched. Your nickname is Rat? With such a burly body, is it an African giant rat? The skinny evolver next to him was a girl. Bai Xiaowen already knew this when he heard their voices during the battle. That girl, Jian Yu, smiled sweetly. Senior, my code name is Fei Yu. You can call me Xiao Yu. It could be seen that the two of them treated each other with sincerity and did not put up any defenses. Generally, when evolvers met for the first time, they would just use their common code names. Very few would use their real names. Of course, it was also possible that the Jian Hao and Jian Yu that the two of them reported were fake names. Bai Xiaowen smiled and said, My name is Lu Wang. I joined Star Alliance less than a year ago, so I'm not a senior. Lord Lu Wang? The siblings, Jian Hao and Jian Yu, cried out in unison. Jian Hao sighed and said, Actually, we all have some guesses. To be able to kill 2 high-grade tyrannosaurs, he must be a Lord-class powerhouse. There are only a dozen or so mid-grade lords in Star Alliance, and we have all seen images of them. You look unfamiliar, so we can figure it out after some elimination. Bai Xiaowen smiled and nodded. This was also the reason why he revealed his true identity. The range of their guesses was already very small, so it was better to reveal his identity openly. At present, it seemed that Xia Feng's Great Xia territory did not have any enmity toward White Phoenix territory. Instead, they had expressed an attitude of helping out at the request of others. This meant that Xia Feng definitely did not know the significance of Xueli territory to Bai Xiaowen. As long as he hid this point, it would be enough. Revealing his identity also meant that Bai Xiaowen's exploration of the secret realm had reached the final stage. He was prepared to seize a gathering point of spiritual power and directly open a portal to return to White Phoenix territory. It would not be long before the Wuya region's secret realm became a hunting ground for high-grade lords. In a situation where he could not fish in troubled waters, it was not wise to stay. Bai Xiaowen did not ask the siblings to keep his identity a secret. He asked directly, "The two of you seem to be very familiar with tyrannosaurs. Have you killed one before?" Jian Hao hurriedly shook his head. "We are just scouts. How could we have such strength?" This is a record that Lord Xiafeng personally left behind in the Great Xia Territories database. It describes the weakness of tyrannosaurs in detail. Bai Xiaowen finally understood. No wonder the siblings knew about the weakness of tyrannosaurs, their hearing, and their keen sense of smell. It seemed that Xiafeng had encountered tyrannosaurs somewhere and killed more than one. "The two of you are scouts. Did you come from the gathering point of spiritual power over there?" Bai Xiaowen pointed to the west. That was the first gathering point of spiritual power that Yuan Lin had explored. Bai Xiaowen himself had not been there. When the siblings heard Bai Xiaowen's words, they thought that he had already explored it. Jian Hao did not hide anything and said, "Yes, that gathering point of spiritual power is very dangerous. There is a powerful Tyrannosaurus Lord, and there are at least 5 ferocious commander tier carnivorous dinosaurs below, as well as many small and medium-sized elite dinosaurs. We had not been hiding for long when we were discovered by 2 tyrannosaurs. We fled all the way here and almost died." Jian Yu patted her almost non-existent chest. "Speaking of which, it is very strange. The two of us should not have attracted much hatred. At most, a few elite dinosaurs chased after us for a while before retreating. However, the dinosaurs at the gathering point were really crazy. 2 high-grade tyrannosaurs chased after us relentlessly. Even if they caught us, how much energy could they replenish by eating us? It was not enough for them to lose." Bai Xiaowen silently apologized in his heart. Jian Yu saw that Bai Xiaowen did not speak, so she asked curiously, "When did Lord Lu Wang find that gathering point? Why didn't he think of seizing it?" Jian Hao helped Bai Xiaowen explain, "Lord Lu Wang is a newly promoted lord, and he had just experienced a war with Tang Dynasty. His army is probably resting. It is normal for him to give up on that gathering point of spiritual power. After all, there are too many powerful dinosaurs." Bai Xiaowen also pondered in his heart. If he wanted to seize that gathering point of spiritual power, it seemed that he would have to mobilize the territory's army. Fortunately, Bai Xiaowen had obtained a large amount of spiritual power as a medium. Otherwise, he would not be able to summon the territory's army. Moreover, even if he seized the gathering point of spiritual power, he would not be able to open the teleportation gate. Jian Yu's eyes lit up, and he said, "Lord L.V. Wang, you can try it now. When we were running for our lives, we sent the coordinates to Lord Shaoxing of the Bone-Melting Land for help. He should have already gone to the rendezvous point." Lord Shaoxing? Bone-Melting Ridge? Bai Xiaowen had never heard of this name. In front of Bai Xiaowen, Jian Yu was really pouring out soybeans from a bamboo tube. She always wanted to tell him everything she knew. He is a vassal lord supported by Lord Xiafeng. It is said that it used to be called Shueli Ridge. After Lord Xiafeng won the war, he changed the name of Shueli Ridge to Bone-Melting Ridge and passed it on to Lord Shaoxing. Chapter 1634. Shueli Territory. Bone-Melting Territory. Bai Xiaowen instantly thought of the phrase "public opinion can melt gold, accumulation destroys bone." Did Xiafeng think that everything was slander? That was why he changed the name of the territory. But he did take over the Shueli territory in the Territory War. Jian Yu's words confirmed Lord Candace's words. Then the other sentence that Candace said, that Xiafeng killed Hua Shueli in the Territory War, was much more realistic. Since Xiafeng did such a thing, why would he hypocritically use the phrase "accumulation destroys bone"? Of course, this was just a guess. Maybe Xiafeng just treated the Shueli territory as a graveyard to bury his old enemy. The bone-melting territory only destroyed Hua Shueli's bones. Bai Xiaowen suppressed his desire to ask and said with a smile, "What's the background of this Lord Shaoxing? He shouldn't be a lord himself." Jian Yu said, "Lord Shaoxing is a lord, but he lost his original territory and became a wandering lord. Later, he was recognized by Lord Xiaofeng and promoted to the new Lord of the Bone-Melting Territory. No matter what, his position is much higher than ours. If he leaves his position in the future, he can directly enter the upper echelons of the Great Xia Territory. Bai Xiaowen nodded slightly. Using the colonial era as an example, Xiao Xing was not a native king who was bullied, but a governor who was appointed to the colony. Bai Xiaowen said, "It seems that Xiao Xing should belong to the Great Xia Territory and be considered your superior, right? You told me that he went to the spirit power gathering point. Isn't that bad?" Jian Yu curled his lips and said, "He's not our superior." He knew that we were being chased by the Tyrannosaurus Rex, but he didn't care at all and only thought about the benefits of the spirit power gathering point. He doesn't care about our lives, and we don't want to care about his interests. Jian Hao hurriedly said, "That's not what we mean. We just feel that the monster at the spirit energy convergence point is very strong, and Lord Xiao Xing can't do it alone, so we hope that Lord Lu Wang can join us. Everyone can work together and share the benefits of the spirit energy convergence point." Bai Xiaowen glanced at Jian Hao. This man looked burly, but he was actually very meticulous. Even Xiao Xing couldn't find any fault with his words. Bai Xiaowen smiled and nodded. "All right, I was just about to go take a look." "You too?" Jian Yu said cheerfully, "We are willing to go together." Bai Xiaowen, Jian Hao coughed awkwardly. "Lord Lu Wang may feel that it is inconvenient for us to accompany him." Bai Xiaowen waved his hand and said, "There's nothing inconvenient about it. Let's go together. That way, I can make an introduction." Bai Xiaowen harvested the T-Rex's carcass. In the end, he obtained the T-Rex's thigh tendon, the T-Rex's sharp teeth, the T-Rex's nose bone, and other materials. The tendon was dark gold ranked level 8, while the other materials were gold level 8. The two siblings did not participate in this process. Because the spiritual realm distributed the spoils of war according to the contribution of the kill, this rule also affected the evolvers. In the end, Bai Xiaowen cut off a few pieces of high-quality thigh meat from the T-Rex's carcass. He planned to give it to Butcher later. As for the complete T-Rex's carcass, his storage bracelet could not fit it. The three of them traveled hundreds of kilometers to the west under the cover of night. Bai Xiaowen's spiritual sense had been paying attention to the west. Suddenly, his expression changed. "Found it." The battle should have already begun. Jian Hao and Jian Yu looked at each other with pale faces. The target location was marked on their spirit probe map. It should be more than 10 kilometers away from here. They did not expect Lord Lu Wang's spiritual sense to be able to detect so far away. It was almost like a human-shaped spirit probe. Not long after, the three of them arrived in front of a valley near the first gathering point of spiritual energy. The roars of ferocious beasts and the sound of surging energy rose and fell one after another. Waves of spiritual energy fluctuations came from the valley. Bai Xiaowen and the other two climbed up the mountain ridge and looked down. They saw the entire valley. There were several dinosaur carcasses in the valley, including 2 T-Rex leaders. If one looked closely, they would see pieces of cloth and armor next to the dinosaur carcasses. Although they could not see their shapes clearly, they should have been the enemies of the dinosaurs who had been torn apart. Another lord has appeared." Jian Hao and Jian Yu exclaimed. Inside the valley, 2 armies, one black and one yellow, were blocking a Tyrannosaurus lord that was more than 15 meters tall. At the rear of the black army was a youth in black armor. According to Jian Yu's introduction, this was the lord of the bone-melting region, Xiao Xing. The yellow-clothed army was clearly not under Xiao Xing's command. They were clearly separated from the black army and did not join forces. At the front of the yellow army stood a giant wrapped in rock. The yellow-clothed army behind him was constantly channeling yellow energy into the rock giant's body. Jian Hao was indeed very familiar with the mid-tier lords of the Starlink Alliance. He immediately transmitted his voice, "Lord Lu Wang, this yellow-clothed army should be the Lord of Goldstone region, sure you. He is different from Lord Xiao Xing. He is not a control-type evolver, but he is a powerful martial artist. Legend has it that he took a different path and learned a control-type skill. He can transfer the spiritual energy of his subordinates to himself and greatly increase his own strength. Now, we finally have a chance to see it. Control-type evolvers were not the only ones who could learn control-type skills. For example, Bai Xiaowen was not a control-type evolver, but he had control-type skills. The selection of skills in the world of evolvers was not inflexible. Of course, most evolvers were still willing to choose skills that corresponded to their class. This was because class manuals could increase the speed of learning skills. Compared to learning skills of other classes, it was twice the result with half the effort. Bai Xiaowen's Eye of Evolution could see that the rock armor wrapped around Shiryu was not material. It was formed from pure energy. In this state, Shiryu's every move would drive the spiritual energy of the 100-man army behind him to attack the enemy. Although it was not a coordination of spiritual energy, it was a different approach to achieve the same result. After seeing Shiryu's true appearance, Bai Xiaowen was slightly startled. He had seen this person before. This person had appeared in the Wuya region's meteorite circle with Yuan Lin and Duanichen. He was also the only person Bai Xiaowen could not intercept his spiritual energy transmission. Now that Shiryu was fighting with all his strength and not holding back his spiritual energy, Bai Xiaowen could see his true strength. He was a level 16 combat-type lord, only one step away from becoming a high-tier lord. Who is this Goldstone region lord? Bai Xiaowen transmitted his voice. Jianhao shook his head and said, Lord Shiryu is a bit mysterious. He has not joined any organization, and his coordinates are not hidden. However, Goldstone region has never been in a war. Lord Shiryu's rise is extremely fast. He is known as a rising star second only to Lord Xiafeng. Chapter 1635. Rumble. The Tyrannosaurus Lord and the Golden Stone Lord, Shiryu, clashed head-on. The difference in size between the two was huge. The Tyrannosaurus Overlord was over 10 meters tall and over 30 meters long. It was an undeniable giant. On the other hand, even though the Shiryu Overlord was covered in a layer of rock armor made of energy, it was only 2 to 3 meters tall. However, in this clash, the Tyrannosaurus Lord's sharp teeth were blocked by Shiryu's cannon fist. The energy armor on Shiryu's arm shattered, but it was soon repaired by strands of yellow energy. The Tyrannosaurus Lord's huge body was forced back a few steps. There were already several terrifying wounds on its body. It could be seen that the combined attacks of the two mid-level lords after summoning their armies had exhausted the Tyrannosaurus Lord. Despicable two-legged monsters, you have invaded our home. The Tyrannosaurus Lord roared and a wave of thought burst out. How surprising. It seems that these ancient dragons have intelligence close to that of humans. This Tyrannosaurus Lord can even communicate with us through thought, Xiao Xing said leisurely. Bai Xiaowen thought to himself, if you have seen Atli Lan Thor, you will know what is called intelligence that surpasses that of ordinary people. Brother Xiao, it seems that someone is coming, Shiryu said calmly after pushing back the Tyrannosaurus Lord. Xiao Xing glanced over and saw the siblings, Jianhao and Jianyu. Two of them are my people. Yes, more accurately, they are scouts from the Great Xia territory. Shiryu obviously knew the relationship between the Great Xia territory and the bone-melting territory. He asked, what about the one behind them? Is he also from the Great Xia territory? I can't see through his strength. The Tyrannosaurus Lord had a chance to catch its breath and did not attack rashly. This was because the appearance of the three two-legged monsters made it suspicious. Jianhao said loudly, Lord Xiao Xing, this is Lord Lu Wang from the White Phoenix territory. He saved us from the Tyrannosaurus Lord. Xiao Xing raised his eyebrows, so you brought him here? Jianyu said directly, the two of us discovered this spiritual energy gathering point. As part of the repayment, we led Sir Lu Wang here. Jianhao hurriedly added, this is also because we consider that the monsters here are too strong, so we found a strong helper for Lord Xiao Xing. I just didn't expect that Lord Shiryu of the Golden Stone region would also be here. Shiryu asked, White Phoenix Overlord. He had never heard of the White Phoenix Overlord participating in the exploration of the Blacktooth region. Also, hadn't the White Phoenix Overlord just entered Star Alliance for less than a year? He should only have the strength of a low-ranked lord. You said that you were looking for a strong helper for Brother Xiao Xing. Forgive me for being blunt, but I don't see how strong he is. Pausing for a moment, Shiryu said, Brother Xiao, are you really willing to let this newly promoted White Phoenix Overlord take advantage of this? The Tyrannosaurus Lord's health had already fallen below the health threshold. We were more than strong enough to deal with it. Most importantly, can Lu Wang's current military strength really be on par with ours? Xiao Xing said, Brother Lu Wang, you saved the people of the Great Xia. According to the rules set by Lord Xiafeng, I have to express my gratitude to you. Therefore, I don't object to your participation. Shiryu furrowed his brows. Xiao Xing pointed at Shiryu and said, however, you also have to consider Brother Shi's opinion. He thinks that you don't have the strength to get a share of the loot. Therefore, you need to prove yourself first. Let us see the military strength of the White Phoenix Army, which is strong enough to swallow the old Great Tang territory. This was to show off his muscles. Bai Xiaowen nodded. I am indeed interested in this spiritual energy gathering point. Then, let's begin. Bai Xiaowen took out a gold-ranked level 7 spiritual energy source. His consciousness connected to the territory. One of the barracks buildings of the 5-element flags appeared in Bai Xiaowen's mind. Bai Xiaowen poured in elemental energy and catalyzed the spiritual energy source. Suddenly, a pillar of light appeared in front of him, revealing the faint image of a light green barracks. Spirit World's loss prompted information, summoning building, projection of giant wood flags martial artists barracks. Projection's spiritual energy intensity is set to 1000 crystals. Your spiritual energy type is True Inner Force, 8 priority, spiritual energy value upper limit is 2660 points. Time required for projection to complete, 22 seconds. Being attacked from the outside will cause the completion time to be extended, and the projection may even fail. Please protect the summoned building's projection from being attacked before the projection is completed. This was the first time Bai Xiaowen had used the authority to summon the territory's army. He quickly realized that a lord needed time to summon an army, and the time required was closely related to the lord's own strength, priority and the upper limit of his spiritual energy. Of course, it was also related to the spiritual energy intensity of the projection. If the projection was set to 500 crystals, perhaps the process would be compressed to less than 10 seconds. In the duel that he had seen back then, Lord Kenneth had only used 1 second to summon 500 crystals to project the lava pool. This was the embodiment of the Lord's own strength. Xiao Xing and Shiryu both watched the scene without batting an eyelid. They had now confirmed that Bai Xiaowen definitely had the support of other forces behind him. In fact, this argument had already appeared in the Star Alliance. If the White Phoenix territory did not have the support of other forces to develop, how could it turn around and swallow up the Great Tang territory? At this moment, Bai Xiaowen had casually taken out a spirit medium, source of spiritual energy, which further confirmed this point. How precious was a source of spiritual energy? For a newly promoted lord to use a high-grade gold-ranked source of spiritual energy without any hesitation, it could only mean that he was rich and overbearing. When Bai Xiaowen summoned the territory's army, the battle power was relatively weak. If they were hostile, they should take this opportunity to attack. However, Xiao Xing naturally would not do so. Otherwise, it would go against the rules set by Xiafeng. He looked at Shiryu. Unexpectedly, Shiryu also did not make a move. The Tyrannosaurus Lord opposite the two roared and charged. The reason was very simple. The Tyrannosaurus Lord was intelligent. It realized that these two-legged monsters were in the same group. When the new two-legged monsters summoned a large number of fighters, it would have no chance at all. What a headache. Xiao Xing waved his hand, and a black giant appeared above the black-clothed army. Following his movements, it swung its sword and blocked the Tyrannosaurus Lord. Let's get rid of this ignorant big guy first, then we'll talk about the spiritual energy gathering point. Shiryu's body flashed with yellow light. He rushed over with large strides and slid past the Tyrannosaurus Lord's huge tail. He hugged the tip of its tail and threw it over his shoulder. Like an ant throwing an elephant, the Tyrannosaurus Lord was thrown flat on its back. Xiao Xing raised his palm and slashed. The spiritual energy manifestation he controlled, the black-armored giant, swung its sword and left a terrible wound on the Tyrannosaurus Lord's abdomen. Chapter 1636. Xiao Xing and Shiryu were both level 16 lords. The Tyrannosaurus Lord was level 18, only 2 levels higher. And Xiao Xing and Shiryu had a 100-man army to assist them in battle. It could be said that any one of them had the ability to fight against the Tyrannosaurus Lord if they led their army. Of course, it was only a fight, it was hard to say that they could easily defeat it. But 2 against 1, the situation was different. The Tyrannosaurus Lord's large body wasn't agile enough, and when surrounded, it was the perfect target. As an ancient dragon species, the strong defense it was so proud of was just a more competent punching bag. Of course, if the Tyrannosaurus Lord's defense wasn't strong enough and its life force wasn't strong enough, it would have been killed before Bai Xiaowen arrived. From Bai Xiaowen's point of view, its strong defense was a good thing. 22 seconds passed. Within the pillar of light, the projection of the giant wood flag's camp finally formed. Just as Bai Xiaowen was summoning the camp projection, over 100 million kilometers away, White Phoenix territory. West of White Phoenix City, above the 5-element flag's camp, the weather changed. Above the giant wood flag's camp, a ray of light fell, scattering down layers of projections. Through these layers of projections, one could vaguely see the primitive forest. The moment the illusory image fell, White Phoenix City's military camp sounded the assembly call. Assemble, assemble. This isn't a drill. This is the Lord's official summon. He's summoning the giant wood flag. Everyone line up. When the projection is formed, we can go over. A group of giant wood flag fighters looked solemn as they stared at the projection gate. Although this was the first time they had seen such a scene, they had done this many times before. This was Bai Xiaowen's preparation. To efficiently summon the territory's army, the army itself had to have quick reactions. Although Bai Xiaowen didn't have a source of spirit energy, he believed that after entering the universe's secret realm, with his own ability, he had a high chance of obtaining it. Hence, Bai Xiaowen had done a few drills to train the 5-element flag fighters' quick reactions. The sharp gold flag, intense flame flag, and the others looked at the giant wood flag fighters with envy. Why do you think the Lord summoned the giant wood flag and not us? Perhaps it's because of the special circumstances that he's interested in the wood attribute Gang Qi. Banner Master Yun is truly lucky to have found the giant wood flag on his first expedition. A single expedition was guaranteed to cost him 1,500 White Phoenix coins, which was enough to exchange for more than 20 hours of comprehension time. Not to mention the possibility of making a contribution. This is also a dangerous job where one's head is tied to one's belt. Who knows what kind of powerful enemy they will be fighting? Oh, don't you know that our Lord has always planned before acting? If it's something he's not confident in, he'll probably stay away from it. West of White Phoenix City, 22 seconds of projection time passed. The space where the giant wood flag's military camp was located was already covered by a clear projection of the dinosaur planet. It was precisely the primitive valley Bai Xiaowen was in. Each team has 10 people. Divide into 6 teams and enter one by one. Yun Zhongli ordered. Groups of giant wood flag martial practitioners stepped into the range of the projection and disappeared. Every time a group of martial artists passed through, the light pillar of the projection would dim a little. This light was the embodiment of the spirit medium's spirit energy strength. Bai Xiaowen used a spirit medium with 1,000 crystals. As for the giant wood flag martial practitioners, after cultivating the Origin Martial Sutra, some of them had already broken through to level 14. This group of mid-level martial artists' strength was generally around 15 crystals, while the low-level martial artist's strength was around 12 crystals. Therefore, every team of 10 that entered the range of the projection would consume more than 100 crystals of the spirit medium's energy strength. In the end, after all 6 teams of 10 had entered, the light pillar was still flickering. Looks like this old man can also go. Yun Zhongli stroked his beard and stepped inside. As a level 14 leader who had just been promoted, Yun Zhongli's energy strength was around 50 crystals. After Yun Zhongli entered, the projection of the giant wood flag's location quickly shrank, but the light pillar was still there. This was because the total energy strength of the giant wood flag, including Yun Zhongli, did not exceed 1,000 crystals. At this time, the energy strength was still around 200 crystals. Bai Xiaowen could use this 200 crystals of energy strength a second time through the 5 elements linkage. For example, he could use the 5 elements linkage of wood breathes fire to invest it in the next use of the fire spirit medium to speed up the summoning of the blazing fire flag's military camp. Dinosaur Planet, T-Rex Valley. Seeing the appearance of Bai Xiaowen's army, the 2 lords, Shao Xing and Shi Yu, both narrowed their eyes and divided a bit of their attention to carefully size them up. Although the number of people is a bit small, only 60, their strength is not bad, Shao Xing said with a smile. They are all elites, and there is also a leader. About half of the soldiers have crossed the crucial threshold of level 14 and become mid-level combatants. This was a fact that was clear on the surface. The armies under the 2 lords, Shao Xing and Shi Yu, were all at level 13, low-level combatants. Don't underestimate the increase from level 13 to level 14. The increase in overall combat strength was at least 30%. Shi Yu was still somewhat dissatisfied. He curled his lips and said, "The individual strength is fine, but it's a mess and not organized." Indeed, compared to the yellow-armored shield-wielding warriors under Shi Yu's command and the black-clothed army under Shao Xing's command, Bai Xiaowen's giant wood flag martial artists did not dress uniformly. Even the colors of their clothes were different. Because of this, Shi Yu judged that Bai Xiaowen's army was a mixed army. Bai Xiaowen brushed it off with a smile. The territory has just been established, so there are not many rules. I've embarrassed myself in front of Lord Shi Yu. Shi Yu snorted and ordered the yellow-armored shield-wielding warriors under his command to open a path to the side. Lord Lu Wang, let's first work together to kill the T-Rex overlord, then we can talk about the spiritual power convergence point. You can't not contribute at all, right? Bai Xiaowen nodded. Fair and reasonable. A small flag appeared in Bai Xiaowen's hand. He waved the flag, and Yun Zhongli immediately shouted, "Formation of the sturdy wall." In the sound of orderly footsteps, 65 element flag martial artists lined up and moved forward to fill the space vacated by Shi Yu's army. Now, Bai Xiaowen officially participated in the battle to besiege the T-Rex overlord. The 5 element flag martial artists were in the middle. Shi Yu's yellow-armored shield-wielding warriors were on the left, and Shao Xing's black-clothed army was on the right. To be honest, it was not good to be in the middle, as it meant that they would have to take the T-Rex overlord's main attack. Shi Yu gave up the middle to Bai Xiaowen because he wanted to show him who was the boss and let him know that this cup of soup was not so easily shared. Bai Xiaowen had no reason to refuse. The 2 lords were fighting the boss together, and he was in the middle of it. He really did not have the right to bargain, so Bai Xiaowen ordered them to form the formation of the sturdy wall and focus on defense. The T-Rex overlord had mountains and cliffs behind it, and it had nowhere to retreat. It let out a low roar as if it was demonstrating its power. Its blood-red eyes stared at Bai Xiaowen. Chapter 1637. Do you think that the newcomer is easy to bully? Seeing the Tyrannosaurus overlord charge in his direction, Shao Xing and Shi Yu, who were on the left and right, looked like they were watching a play. Bai Xiaowen shook his head slightly and took out a talisman he had drawn beforehand. He tied it to a palm-sized rock. Then, Bai Xiaowen exerted some force and left a spiritual energy imprint on the rock. Then, he threw the rock and talisman at his feet. Rumble! The Tyrannosaurus overlord furiously charged forward and directly collided with the wall of energy condensed by the martial artists of the Great Wood Flag. Amidst the violent tremors, the martial artists of the Great Wood Flag uniformly retreated a few steps to reduce the force of the impact. At the same time, the Tyrannosaurus Overlord's charge was interrupted. It was as if it had collided with a high wall. For a moment, it felt dizzy. Bai Xiaowen rushed forward under the protection of the impregnable wall formation. Formless blade. Taking advantage of this opening, he slashed at the Tyrannosaurus Overlord's nose. Xiao Xing, he blocked it. Although it seems a bit forced. Shiryu, charging forward to be an assassin, is too risky. The nose was a vital point. Bai Xiaowen had used all his strength in this attack. His goal was to hurt and scare the Tyrannosaurus Overlord. Poochie! Blood splattered everywhere. The Tyrannosaurus Overlord let out a heaven-shaking roar. It endured the intense pain and the chaotic spiritual energy and bit at Bai Xiaowen in the air. It looked as if Bai Xiaowen had taken the initiative to send himself into the Tyrannosaurus Overlord's big mouth. Whoosh! In the next instant, Bai Xiaowen forcibly disappeared in front of the Tyrannosaurus Overlord's big mouth. What replaced him was a small rock with a talisman tied to it. Crack! The Tyrannosaurus Overlord bit empty air. In fact, it had swallowed the small rock along with the talisman. For it, a palm-sized rock was not even comparable to a grain of rice. Explode! Bai Xiaowen, who had used a teleportation technique to safely land on the ground, expressionlessly spat out a word. Rumble! The talisman in the Tyrannosaurus Overlord's mouth exploded. Bai Xiaowen looked left and right. Xiao Xing and Shiryu shrugged their shoulders. If they did not use such a good opportunity to attack, then it would be too fake. The rock fist and materialized sword attacked the Tyrannosaurus Overlord's left and right. The Tyrannosaurus Overlord's right were hit, and it were roars of the Tyrannosaurus Overlord. After the Overlord's Overlord, the Overlord's Overlord had, to the Overlord had Overlord to attack Overlord would drag in Overlord's Overlord. Overlord were not to the Overlord's Overlord Lord. Overlord himself Tyrannosaurus Overlord's was Overlord. The Overlord's overs was Overlord's right Overlord at Overlord. Overs of Xiaowen Wall. Overlord by Overlord Chi Overlord's overs Overlord. The Tyrannosaurus Lord had only taken the opportunity to retreat and dissipate the force of the collision. However, the Tyrannosaurus Lord himself had been stopped for a moment, and the leader of the Tyrannosaurus Lord, Bai Xiaowen, had delivered a vicious blow to his nose. Fortunately, the formation of this new army was more than enough for defense, but not enough for offense. Don't worry about them. Just attack those with weaker defenses. In the game, the reason why a team could defeat a boss whose stats were much higher than theirs was because the tank was tanking at the front. The rest of the team could attack freely, while the stupid boss would only attack the tank. If the Tyrannosaurus Overlord wasn't smart enough, it might have been angered by Bai Xiaowen and kept attacking the giant wood flag. But because the Tyrannosaurus Overlord was as smart as a human, it was able to let go of its anger and weigh the pros and cons. It had to be said that its rough and barbaric appearance was very deceptive. The previous battle had also proven that Shiryu's team relied on the defensive chi of the yellow-armored shield warrior. Overlord Shiryu, who was wearing the Overlord stone armor, also had strong defensive abilities. Therefore, the Tyrannosaurus Overlord charged at Xiao Xing. Fortunately, Bai Xiaowen and Shiryu would not just watch the show. While the Tyrannosaurus Overlord was attacking Xiao Xing, they were also attacking. Shiryu's giant stone fist and Bai Xiaowen's spirit energy combined attack bombarded the Tyrannosaurus Overlord's side ribs. However, Bai Xiaowen was holding back. The combined attack was only 60% of its normal power. This confirmed the Tyrannosaurus Overlord's speculation. Bai Xiaowen's team had enough defense, but not enough offense. Bai Xiaowen, on the other hand, glanced sideways at Shiryu. He guessed that Shiryu was holding back as well. They weren't fools. They definitely had to hold back some of their strength in order to fight for the spirit energy convergence point later. Once the Tyrannosaurus Overlord fell, the three of them would become competitors. The unlucky one was Xiao Xing. His materialized black-clothed giant warrior could only defend with all his strength. He only defended and did not attack to prevent further losses. Just like that, everyone had their own plans and did not work together. As a result, the Tyrannosaurus Overlord was still able to hold on for a long time even though the three overlords led hundreds of troops to surround and attack him. During this time, the Tyrannosaurus Overlord used a large area of effect flame jet, similar to the Tyrannosaurus Rex, Earth Fire Pillar, pouring fire energy into the ground and erupting at a specific location, Ring of Flame, large area of effect flame expansion shockwave, and other innate spells. These skills, combined with the Tyrannosaurus Overlord's biting and brawling, caused some trouble for the three overlords. However, in the end, the Tyrannosaurus Overlord could not withstand the continuous attacks of the three overlords and was drained of its spirit energy. The rest was simple. The three overlords advanced cautiously and killed the Tyrannosaurus Overlord on the spot. The siblings, Jianhao and Jianyu, were watching this unprecedented battle from afar. They felt that their horizons had been broadened. Their strength could not be compared to the three overlords at all. They were only stronger than the soldiers under the overlords. Their strength was equivalent to the combined strength of a few soldiers. As for the Tyrannosaurus Overlord, it was an existence that far surpassed them. Overlords and non-overlords are really two different kinds of existences, Jianyu said emotionally. The real battle has just begun, Jianhao said softly as he looked at the soldiers who were dismembering the Tyrannosaurus Overlord's corpse and collecting materials. The soldiers were collecting materials, such as the Tyrannosaurus Overlord's tendons, skin, eyes, nose bones. They were all materials that had unknown uses. As for the Tyrannosaurus Overlord's bones and flesh, no one was prepared to take them. They were simply too large and could not be taken away. This was actually a way for the soldiers to rest and reorganize. The three overlords sat facing each other. The scene seemed very peaceful, but in reality, there was a hidden conflict. Now, it's time to talk about the spirit energy gathering point, Shiryu said first. Xiao Xing and Bai Xiaowen nodded slightly. Shiryu pointed at the Tyrannosaurus Overlord's mountain-like corpse. The spirit energy gathering point guarded by the Tyrannosaurus Overlord has a rare treasure growing there. You both saw it. The two of them nodded again. Chapter 1638. There were 7 fist-sized green fruits growing on the small tree. Bai Xiaowen scanned them with his Eye of Evolution and saw the introduction of the green fruits. Opening fruit, wondrous item. After eating it, creatures with low or no intelligence can be enlightened and gain intelligence close to that of humans. Clearly, the dinosaur lord's ability to communicate telepathically and the dinosaurs under its command had a rather strict organizational structure, which was inseparable from the opening fruit on this fruit tree. When Bai Xiaowen saw the fruit for the first time, he had a feeling that he had to get it. Although his summoned creatures were all given self-awareness, as undead creatures, it was too slow for them to improve their self-awareness. If he gave the fruit to Butcher and the other summoned creatures, it would definitely increase their intelligence rapidly. What were the benefits of increasing intelligence? Of course, there were many benefits. The biggest one was that it would unlock the shackles of undead creatures and give them the same growth potential as the Wrath Claw. As everyone knew, the advantage of undead creatures was that they were hard-working and didn't need to sleep or rest. Their disadvantage was that their potential was limited and they couldn't be trained as a main force. The reason for this disadvantage was that their self-awareness was too weak and their intelligence was low. If undead creatures had the same intelligence as humans, the disadvantage of their low potential could be made up for. Although it would create new problems, such as having more ideas in their hearts, it would affect their loyalty. However, Bai Xiaowen felt that he had to improve his strength first before considering the problem of loyalty. Otherwise, what was the use of having a group of subordinates whose loyalty was off the charts but whose strength was useless? Bai Xiaowen could see the value of these fruits because he had the Eye of Evolution. Shiryu and Xiao Xing couldn't see it. However, this didn't mean that they would easily give up on these fruits. On the contrary, the two of them evaluated the value of these fruits based on the strength of the Tyrannosaurus Lord. The evaluation was higher than the actual value. Therefore, this problem was placed in front of the three of them. Xiaoxing said softly, "There are 7 fruits in total. How should we distribute them?" Shiryu said, "There are 2 plans. One is to count them as part of the battle for the spiritual power convergence point, and the winner takes all in the end. The other plan is to divide the fruits in advance. As for the spiritual power convergence point, it depends on everyone's ability." Xiaoxing laughed. "The first option is too unfair. Everyone contributed to killing the Tyrannosaurus overlord." Shiryu nodded and said, "Then let's divide the fruits first, and then fight for the spiritual power convergence point." The problem is, the 7 fruits can only be divided among 3 people. Who will take the 3 fruits? Xiaoxing said, "Why don't we each take 2? The last one will be taken by the winner in the battle for the gathering point of spiritual power." Shiryu snorted. Brother Xiao is very confident in himself. Bai Xiaowen remained silent as the two of them bickered. The two of them also treated him like air. However, since the two of them had agreed on the distribution plan, Bai Xiaowen would not object. It was common sense to not stand on the opposite side of 2 factions at the same time since it was a tripartite balance. Each of the 3 parties picked 2 opening fruits, and the last one was hung on the fruit tree. Now, it's time to decide the ownership of this spiritual energy convergence point. The ownership rights could not be divided into 3 parts, so it was destined that only the winner could have it. The fairest way is to use strength to speak. Shiryu said. Xiaoxing looked at Jianhao and Jianyu, who were not far away. He spread his hands and said, "Sorry, I don't plan on fighting with Overlord Lu Wang for this gathering point." Bai Xiaowen and Shiryu both narrowed their eyes. Xiaoxing smiled and said, "Overlord Lu Wang saved the Jian siblings. Overlord Xia Feng set a rule that the people of the Great Xia territory clearly distinguish between kindness and hatred. When others owe you a favor, you must remember to return it first. Therefore, if my opponent is Lord Lu Wang in this battle for the spirit convergence point, I will retreat. This is the favor I'm returning on behalf of the Jian siblings. Are you going to withdraw?" Shiryu asked. Xiaoxing shook his head. "If the opponent is Brother Shiryu, I have no need to withdraw." "Then what do you mean?" Shiryu said coldly. Xiaoxing laughed. "It's very simple. Let the 2 of you compete first. If Overlord Lu Wang wins, then I will voluntarily give up my right to compete and let Overlord Lu Wang obtain the gathering point. If Overlord Shiryu wins, then he will compete with me again." Bai Xiaowen quickly understood Xiaoxing's intentions. Xiaoxing probably judged that Lu Wang was weaker than Shiryu and had a high chance of losing. This way, Xiaoxing could wait patiently and start the second round with Shiryu, which meant that he had a free pass. As for avoiding competing with Overlord Lu Wang to return the favor, it was just an excuse. Bai Xiaowen didn't forget that when the Jian siblings were being chased by the Tyrannosaurus Rex, they had sent a distress signal to Xiaoxing early in the morning. However, Xiaoxing had turned a deaf ear to it and didn't care whether the Jian siblings were dead or alive. Would such a person give up his own benefits to help others repay a favor? It was simply impossible. Shiryu also understood Xiaoxing's intentions and said coldly, "Brother Xiao, you have a good plan. Doesn't this mean that you have a free pass and I have to fight twice?" Xiaoxing shook his head and laughed. "Brother Shi, are you sure you can beat Overlord Lu Wang? This is a bit too disrespectful. I am also taking a risk. If Overlord Lu Wang beats Brother Shi, then I will voluntarily forfeit." Shiryu snorted. "Do you think such a possibility exists? You are clearly looking for an excuse." Xiaoxing's expression did not change as he said leisurely, "Or we can change the method. Brother Lu Wang, let's work together to get Brother Shiryu out of here. Then I will give up the competition and give you the gathering point. How about it?" Bai Xiaowen smiled and did not speak. This was clearly Xiaoxing's way of pressuring Shiryu. If he was serious, he would lose. Shiryu's expression changed slightly. 2 against 1? Don't go too far. Xiaoxing smiled. Then Brother Shiryu, make your choice. Do you accept the 2 against 1, or do you want to fight Overlord Luwang first? Shiryu stared at Bai Xiaowen. Overlord Luwang, do you have any objections to Overlord Xiaoxing's words? Bai Xiaowen said calmly, it seems that Overlord Xiaoxing's arrangement is beneficial to me. You are just cannon fodder that he threw out. He used you to exhaust my strength so that he can sit back and enjoy the fruits of his labor. Shiryu said word by word. Cannon fodder? The smile on Bai Xiaowen's face faded slightly. Lord Shiryu, just as Lord Xiaoxing said, you should watch your words. Do you really think that you can defeat me for sure? Shiryu paused for a moment, then gritted his teeth and said, fine. Don't regret it. Bai Xiaowen looked at Xiaoxing in front of so many people. Overlord Xiaoxing should keep his promise, right? If I win, Xiaoxing smiled and nodded. That's right. If you beat Brother Shiryu, I will automatically forfeit. Although there were only 5 evolvers present, there were so many territory soldiers. They were not made of wood. The territory soldiers all had eyes and ears and could be considered witnesses. Chapter 1639. Then, there is a need to limit the scope of the competition, Shiryu said. I propose that we use the current summoned army as the base for the battle. Both sides are not allowed to use spirit mediums to summon new territorial armies to avoid falling into an endless battle of attrition. Xiaoxing shook his head. Lord Luwang only has 60 soldiers, while you have 100 under you. The numbers are not balanced. This is unfair. Shiryu shouted, half of him are mid-level martial artists above level 14, and he also has a mid-level martial artist leader. In terms of combat power crystals, it is more than enough to make up for the disadvantage in numbers. Xiaoxing looked at Bai Xiaowen. Brother Luwang, what do you think? Bai Xiaowen was also unwilling to turn this competition into an unrestricted battle. The losses were too great. He smiled and said, I have no objections. All right. Xiaoxing stood up and ordered his black-clothed army to retreat. Then we will make room for the 2 of you. Soon, Shiryu led his army into a new formation. Shiryu's 100 men were all shield warriors who cultivated Earth attribute battle energy. They were called Earth Shield Guards. Shiryu himself also cultivated Earth attribute battle energy. These 100 Earth Shield Guards were very compatible with his attribute. Shiryu had spent a lot of effort to recruit them. The 60 martial artists under Bai Xiaowen's command were a little like a motley crew. Fortunately, these great wood flag martial artists all cultivated wood attribute stellar chi, even though they were a mess. The wood attribute's ability to restrain the earth attribute was Bai Xiaowen's trump card. The 5-element flag had 5 attributes. Bai Xiaowen had specially summoned the giant wood flag to restrain the earth attribute stellar energy. Of course, the wood attribute stellar energy's defense was good and its recovery ability was strong. When it formed the impregnable wall formation, it was more resilient and could reduce losses in the battle against the Tyrannosaurus Lord. I'm not a commander-type lord. Shiryu, who was standing at the front of the Earth Shield Guards, opened the curtains of this competition with one sentence. What I'm best at is fighting commander-type lords. Bai Xiaowen's expression was calm. He did not say anything to increase his momentum. He only waved his flag. The giant wood flag soldiers quickly formed a circular formation. Battle Chi Infusion. Shiryu shouted. The 100 Earth Shield Guardians behind him raised their shields and shouted at the same time. Every Earth Shield Guardian's body emitted a yellow Do-Chi radiance. Streaks of yellow fighting aura circled around Shiryu's body, covering him with a layer of yellow stone armor, turning him into a 3-meter-tall armored giant. Shiryu waved his hand and a knight's scepter appeared in his right hand. In response to the knight's scepter, an enlarged version of the giant scepter appeared in the hands of the 3-meter-tall armored giant. Dark gold war equipment, dazzling gold staff. Shiryu walked forward step by step, his aura rising steadily. He wanted to make Bai Xiaowen lower his head, so he said in a low voice, "It's a piece of equipment made for war, a powerful item that can turn the tide of war. Of course, against you, I don't even need to use its precious usage." Bai Xiaowen smiled and shook his head slightly. He really has a lot of tricks up his sleeve. You'll lose for sure. With my first strike, I will break your formation. The armored giant that Shiryu had transformed into raised his scepter and smashed it down. Rumble! An enormous crack appeared the moment the scepter struck the ground, quickly extending forward like a strange python. Wherever it passed, the ground cracked and crumbled. This strike was just as Shiryu had said. He wanted to shatter the ground beneath the giant wood flag martial artist's feet and break Bai Xiaowen's formation. Obviously, this kind of formation that relied on the earth veins had obvious weaknesses. Bai Xiaowen raised his right hand. Spirit energy coordination has been completed. Giant wood combined strike. Streaks of emerald green aura energy condensed, and under the support of the water mirror formation, their power suddenly increased by 20%. Then, Bai Xiaowen used the combined strike technique to condense them into a giant emerald green palm and pushed it forward. The crack in the ground stopped in front of the giant wood flag martial artist. It was as if there was an invisible barrier that blocked the violent impact of the explosion. Bzzz. With a massive boom, the violent force extended to both sides, stirring up a demonic wind that sent dirt and stone flying. Only the area where Bai Xiaowen and his giant wood flag martial artists were standing was undamaged. The other areas on both sides had been destroyed by the shockwaves. Shiryu was not surprised. Instead, he laughed and said, "You used up the chance for the combined strike, didn't you? But I can make a second strike in 2 seconds. Let's see how you deal with it." It was obvious that Shiryu was very familiar with the spirit energy coordination and knew that after one spirit energy coordination, it required a certain amount of time to rest. This time, Shiryu clearly used his full strength. The 3-meter-tall armored giant leapt up, his giant scepter smashing down at Bai Xiaowen's formation. But in the air, Shiryu's eyes were already constricting. Impossible, Bai Xiaowen's expression was still calm. He opened his right hand and softly spat out 4 words at the leaping Shiryu. Spirit energy manifestation. A blurry shadow of a green giant appeared above the heads of the 60 giant wood flag martial artists. The materialized green giant swung its giant fists and hammered down at the armored giant in the air. Shiryu tumbled back in a sorry state. Sheiji. With a wave of Bai Xiaowen's hand, a group of summon creatures appeared on the flanks of the Earth Shield Guard Legion. The one leading them was the level 15 combat-type lord, Sheiji, who had been resurrected from darkness. This was not a violation of the rules. The rules that the two sides had agreed on were not to use psychics to summon the territory's army to participate in the battle. These summon creatures were the personal abilities of Bai Xiaowen, who was a summoner, and not the territory's army. Of course, they were not included. Not good. Why is there another lord-level combat power? Shiryu was shocked. Although his Earth Shield guards had strong defense, it depended on who the opponent was. Against a mid-level lord-level combat power, the Earth Shield guards, which were only level 13 elites, were simply lambs waiting to be slaughtered. This was because the only control-type skill that Shiryu had learned, battle energy infusion, allowed the Earth Shield guards to focus their battle energy on him. The Earth Shield guards' defense was not strengthened. Instead, it was weakened. It could not compare to the collective defense of Bai Xiaowen's impregnable wall formation. It could not protect the lives of individual soldiers. As the hope of the entire village, Shiryu, who had the strongest combat power, wanted to return to his own formation and repel the surprise attack force that Bai Xiaowen had sent out. But he could not do it. This was because the green aura giant that Bai Xiaowen's spiritual energy materialized had already entangled the armored giant that he had transformed into with vines of green aura energy. When the wood-type shield encountered the earth-type battle energy, it was still subtly absorbing and transforming it, causing it to grow. It was even harder for Shiryu to break free. Every time he broke free of a section of the vine shield, a new vine shield would appear. Chapter 1640. Shiryu's heart was bleeding. Every time an Earth Shield Guardian was killed, it meant a loss of at least 130 spirit crystals. In order to recruit these warriors with Earth attribute Do Chi and maintain their loyalty, the effort spent couldn't be measured in spirit crystals. The more practical reason was that every death of an Earth Shield Guardian meant that the Do Chi transmitted to his body was weakened. Damn it! Shiryu suddenly raised the scepter in his hand. A blinding golden light burst out from the scepter. In an instant, the yellow rock on the 3-meter-tall rock giant that Shiryu had transformed into began to peel off inch by inch, revealing his dazzling golden true body. It was as if the rock giant had been plated with a layer of gold. After this transformation, although Shiryu's body had shrunk by a size, the spirit chi he emitted had become purer and more powerful. From a 3-meter-tall rock giant, he had transformed into a 2-meter-tall golden armored giant. This is the additional skill of the Dark Gold War weapon, Dazzling Gold Scepter, Gold Change. Transforming Earth attribute energy into metal attribute energy, temporarily granting a 30% increase in spirit chi. Xiao Xing, who was watching from the side, revealed a smile. Very good, the gold change has been used. It cannot be used a second time within a day. Whoosh! The golden armored giant that Shiryu had transformed into suddenly broke free from the green vine chi around his ankles. Metal restrains wood. The green chi of the giant wood flag was not only unable to continue absorbing Shiryu's chi for its own use, but it was also injured by the golden armored giant's metal Do Chi, causing it to explode. Now that Shiryu had some free time, he quickly returned to the Earth Shield Guardian's formation. Die! Facing Sheiji, Shiryu's scepter suddenly smashed out, and a sharp whistling sound could be heard. Sheiji suddenly raised her chi and activated the 7 flashes. In an instant, 7 figures of Sheiji appeared on the battlefield. Afterimages, or clones. Shiryu laughed coldly. Insignificant skill. Shiryu's arm that was holding the scepter vibrated at high speed, causing the surrounding space to tremble. The 7 figures of Sheiji reunited after dislocating for a while. Clang! Shiryu's scepter smashed down, forcing Sheiji to forcefully raise her chi to block. After spitting out a mouthful of blood, Sheiji's body drifted backward like a leaf. She wasn't a warrior-type fighter in the first place, and her opponent was a level 16 fighter lord, Shiryu. Not to mention, there was also the Do Chi output of 100 Earth Shield Guardians, as well as the boost from the dazzling gold scepter. Snake Bell was the equivalent of a level 15 Lord-ranked Snake Bell. When she clashed with a level 18 or above High Lord-ranked Snake Bell, she was forced to retreat with injuries. Only Sheiji, who had the strength of a lord, could put up a fight. If it were an intermediate commander like the Death Knight, they would most likely die instantly. The golden armored giant that Shiryu had transformed into quickly caught up and smashed his scepter at the injured Sheiji. Dong! A muffled sound was heard. An emerald green hand of stellar energy gripped the scepter firmly. The violent airflow blew up Sheiji's black veil. At this moment, Bai Xiaowen's spirit energy manifestation finally arrived. This was also why spirit energy concretions were cumbersome. The soldiers had to move quickly in order for the spirit energy concretions to move with them. In this aspect, it wasn't as flexible as Shiryu's Do Chi transmission. As expected, you have some tricks up your sleeve. You were actually able to break Sheiji's ultimate skill, 7 flashes. Bai Xiaowen muttered to himself, however, if you can't kill Sheiji before I arrive and eliminate my summon creatures, then you'll still lose. Although the spirit energy manifestation of the Great Wood Flag was restrained by the golden armored giant's Do Chi, with Bai Xiaowen's efforts, it still had no problem holding Shiryu back. With the Death Knight as the arrowhead, he launched an army charge at the Earth Shield Guardians. Butcher, Kits, and the other summon creatures all swarmed forward. Although Sheiji was injured, she didn't lose her ability to fight. She also joined in the attack on the Earth Shield Guardians. One by one, the Earth Shield Guardians fell to the ground and died. Shiryu was blocked by Bai Xiaowen's Great Wood Flag and couldn't stop his soldiers from being slaughtered. I admit defeat. Shiryu saw that the situation wasn't good and immediately said, I give up on this spirit energy gathering point. If he didn't admit defeat quickly, the 100 Earth Shield Guardians would probably be wiped out. Bai Xiaowen also chose to stop. As long as he could win, it was fine. There was no need to kill them all. If he was forced into a corner, Shiryu could break the rules and use spirit mediums to summon more troops. This would only cause both sides to suffer heavy losses. Xiao Xing's expression froze. Brother Shi, you're admitting defeat so quickly? This isn't like you. After a short moment of stiffness, Xiao Xing narrowed his eyes and said. Shiryu shrugged his shoulders, Lord Lu Wang's battle power is above mine. I accept my defeat wholeheartedly. In fact, Shiryu knew that even if he used other trump cards to defeat Bai Xiaowen, the result would be a great loss and Xiao Xing would take advantage of it. This spirit energy gathering point was definitely out of the question. It was better to keep his trump cards. He didn't want to work for Xiao Xing for nothing. Bai Xiaowen cupped his hands and said humbly, You're too kind. Lord Shiryu's methods have opened my eyes. I have to thank Lord Shiryu for going easy on me in this battle. Shiryu felt that Bai Xiaowen was a little more pleasing to the eye. He then looked at Xiao Xing, Brother Xiao, I remember you said that if Lord Lu Wang won, you would willingly give up the spirit energy gathering point. Xiao Xing's attitude from before had really made Shiryu furious. Hence, Shiryu wanted to return the favor and annoy Xiao Xing. Xiao Xing had already calmed down and happily nodded. Of course, the people of Great Xia are true to their words. Brother Lu Wang, congratulations on obtaining this spirit energy gathering point. Bai Xiaowen smiled, many thanks. You don't need to thank me. I didn't fight with you this time because I wanted to repay the favor. Now that the favor has been repaid, if we meet similar situations in the future, I won't go easy on you. Brother Lu Wang, you have to understand. Xiao Xing seemed very calm. Shiryu curled his lips, boring, I'm leaving. He took the remaining Earth Shield Guardians and left. Xiao Xing also cupped his hands, Brother Lu Wang, I'll also take my leave. Jian Hao and Jian Yu had finished watching this show and also came to say goodbye to Bai Xiaowen. They thanked Bai Xiaowen again for saving them. Bai Xiaowen's heart skipped a beat, and he transmitted his voice to Jian Hao, Brother Haozi, I have something to ask of you. Jian Hao was slightly startled. He glanced at Xiao Xing and also transmitted his voice, Lord Lu Wang, please speak. Bai Xiaowen said, I'll immediately use this spirit energy gathering point to open a teleportation gate and return to my territory. Jian Hao nodded. This was the basic operation of a lord after obtaining a spirit energy gathering point, so it wasn't strange. Bai Xiaowen continued, however, I still have a few companions who are still exploring this dinosaur planet. I have a locator talisman here. If you meet them in the future, please tell them the coordinates of this place so that they have a way to return home. Chapter 1641. Bai Xiaowen and Jian Hao shook hands lightly and passed the locator talisman to Jian Hao while avoiding Xiao Xing's eyes and ears. As for Jian Hao and his sister, as well as the Great Xia territory behind them, Bai Xiaowen's current view was that they could be trusted before their relationship with Xueli territory was exposed. Furthermore, Bai Xiaowen's impression of the Great Xia territory's evolvers was better than that of ordinary evolvers. Their clear distinction between gratitude and grudges and the way they handled matters suited Bai Xiaowen's personality better. Jian Hao put away the locator talisman and agreed. After everyone left, Bai Xiaowen walked to the front of the enlightening fruit tree. The location of the fruit tree was where the spiritual energy converged. Standing at this location, one could clearly feel that the surrounding spiritual energy was slowly rotating like a vortex, converging under the ground where the fruit tree was located. A notification came from the spiritual realm. You have discovered a spiritual energy gathering point. Do you wish to use your authority as a lord to open the portal to White Phoenix territory? Note 1, if you do so, you will need to consume a source of spiritual energy. Note 2, after the portal is opened, the spiritual energy gathering point will disappear. Note 3, The quality of the source of spiritual energy you use determines the stability of the portal. Bai Xiaowen inquired about the last one. Due to the influence of the spatial laws, attacks against the portal were ineffective. No matter if it was a physical attack or an energy attack, they would all be guided into the spatial crack. Therefore, after the portal was set up, there was no problem with its safety. There was no need to worry about it being destroyed by others. Therefore, the only important thing was the stability of the portal itself. The stronger the source of spiritual energy, the more stable the portal would be and the lower the possibility of it collapsing on its own. A long-term and stable teleportation portal was very important. This was a material channel between the territory and the secret territory. In the future, one could freely enter and exit the dinosaur planet to collect rare resources. One only needed to pay a certain amount of spiritual crystals as a toll. This was also the reason why Bai Xiaowen decided to return without hesitation after obtaining a spiritual energy gathering point. At the same time, this portal was also an eye. Bai Xiaowen could use the territory boundary marker to observe the situation around the portal from afar. It could be said that there were many benefits. Bai Xiaowen took out a level 7 dark gold soul source and chose to agree. The source of spiritual energy emitted a dark golden light and slowly sank. The ground rumbled as if an invisible hand was tearing the ground apart. The Acupore's fruit tree was on the verge of collapsing due to the cracks in the ground. Bai Xiaowen quickly pulled it out and wrapped its roots with a large clump of soil. Bai Xiaowen planned to plant this fruit tree in his territory. Perhaps it would be able to survive. Soon, a fissure was torn open in the ground, and the source of spiritual energy entered it. The ground slowly closed. Whoosh! An azure teleportation portal that shone like the waves of the sea appeared in front of Bai Xiaowen. The teleportation gate was connected to the White Phoenix Territory's teleportation gate. The Spirit Realm's laws then sent a notification that Bai Xiaowen could make some initial settings for this teleportation gate. Bai Xiaowen then set the qualifications to enter the White Phoenix Territory through this teleportation gate. It had to be a living being from the White Phoenix Territory, such as the White Phoenix Battle Team and other existences that had left their spiritual energy imprint on the boundary marker, as well as the territory's army soldiers. In addition, if one wanted to use this teleportation gate, they had to be approved by a manager who had secondary authority over the White Phoenix Territory's boundary marker. After setting these two conditions, it could eliminate the possibility of enemies attacking the White Phoenix Territory through this teleportation gate. This was also a common choice when other territories set up teleportation gates. After doing all this, Bai Xiaowen turned around and glanced at the giant wood flag's martial artists. Go back. This time, you responded to my call to battle. You are all meritorious people, and the territory will definitely not be stingy with your rewards. You reap what you sow, this is the indisputable truth of the White Phoenix Territory. The giant wood flag's martial artists all raised their hands in celebration. There was no danger in this expedition, and they had practically picked up merit for free. Compared to the other 4 flags, they were quite lucky. This was also Bai Xiaowen's intention. Right now, the territory's army's morale was not very stable. These martial artists who came from the Jianghu all had some small calculations in their hearts. It was normal for them to be greedy for life and afraid of death. Therefore, when he summoned the territory's army to battle in the early stages, Bai Xiaowen would try his best to choose a less dangerous place to avoid large-scale casualties. Only by going out to battle safely again and again like this could he gradually cultivate the martial artists' confidence and prevent them from resisting the call to battle. After the giant wood flag's martial artists passed through the teleportation gate and returned to the White Phoenix Territory one after another, the people of the territory would definitely surround this expedition and ask about it. He would let the other 4 flags hold on to their envious thoughts and look forward to the next call to battle. Bai Xiaowen turned his head one last time and glanced at this dinosaur planet that was both rich and dangerous, and stepped on the way back. The feeling of double gravity disappeared, and the White Phoenix Territory once again simulated the standard gravity of Earth. The feeling of stepping on solid ground came over him, and Bai Xiaowen stepped out of the White Phoenix Territory's teleportation gate. "Husband, you've worked hard on this expedition." Jinmi, who was dressed in palace attire, led the young men and women to greet him in front of the teleportation gate. "Ah, don't be so restrained," Bai Xiaowen shook Jinmi's hand. "Territory, did anything happen?" Jinmi smiled. "Husband didn't go out for long this time, so everything in the territory is normal. Also, Miss Qiao Rui has already returned from the realm gate and returned to the territory one step before husband." Bai Xiaowen was a little surprised and smiled. "She really is cautious, that's good." For Qiao Rui, Li Shi, Han Su, and Cecilia, the dinosaur planet was indeed very dangerous. If they encountered high-level elite-level dinosaurs, they could still deal with them, but if it was commander-level dinosaurs such as the toothless pterosaur, Tyrannosaurus rex, and so on, they would probably only have the option of running. After all, this was a high-level secret realm, and the difficulty was increased by a large level, so it was not a joke. Therefore, the most sensible thing for the four of them to do was not to go too far away from the initial spatial node. With the initial spatial node as the center, they would explore a small area nearby. If they encountered elite-level dinosaurs, they could try to kill them. If they encountered commander-level or even stronger dinosaurs, they would directly escape to the spatial node and directly return to the Black-Tooth Territory's secret realm portal, then find the White Phoenix Territory's realm gate near the meteorite circle and return. Now it seemed that Qiao Rui should have encountered some kind of danger and had to return early. In fact, Li Shi and the others should be back soon. After all, it would soon be the high-level evolvers' turn to enter in large numbers, leaving very little room for the mid-level evolvers to gain. Bai Xiaowen asked about Qiao Rui's situation, mainly whether she was injured. Jinmi shook her head. Miss Qiao Rui went into seclusion to cultivate as soon as she came back. There are no traces of injury. That's good. Bai Xiaowen then handed over the dismembered remains of the Tyrannosaurus overlord that were transported back through the portal to the kitchen. Then, he personally chose a place with rich spiritual energy and planted the enlightenment fruit tree. Of course, the last enlightenment fruit hanging on the tree was also picked by Bai Xiaowen. "Butcher, Queen of Banshees, Sheiji. I'll take the three of you. Let me see if the enlightenment fruit's effect is as great as I imagined, and if it can help you unlock a higher potential limit." Bai Xiaowen called the three strongest summoned creatures in front of him. Chapter 1642. "Master, please wait a moment." Delpha's face appeared on the Grim Reaper's visage mask. Bai Xiaowen was a little confused. Delpha hurriedly said, "Master, I have a request." "Say it." Delpha said, "I request to change carriers." "Master, please give me the Queen of Banshees." Bai Xiaowen was a little surprised. "You need this? Queen of Banshees?" He then summoned Delpha from the Grim Reaper's visage mask. "Then why didn't you ask?" Delpha said, "After all, the Queen of Banshees is a powerful leader-level summoned creature. I was worried that I would make Master unhappy if I asked for it rashly, so I wanted to make more contributions before making this excessive request." Bai Xiaowen said noncommittally, "Then, why are you asking for it now?" Delpha said with some fear, "Because Master is going to use the enlightenment fruit on the Queen of Banshees. This will make the newborn consciousness of the Queen of Banshees quickly grow to the level of a normal person. In this way, I won't have a chance anymore." "Wait a moment." Bai Xiaowen suddenly frowned and asked with a trace of doubt, "Delpha, did I mention the effects of the enlightenment fruit? Where did you learn about it?" The enlightenment fruit itself was a strange item. Even Shiryu and Xiaoxing, the two middle-level evolvers, did not know about it. Bai Xiaowen obtained the information about the use of the enlightenment fruit through the Eye of Evolution. But from the beginning to the end, Bai Xiaowen had never mentioned its effects. However, Bai Xiaowen did not doubt Delpha because she had already proved her loyalty in the battle with the 7th-generation Grim Reaper, Nigar. Delpha said, "I remember the knowledge about the enlightenment fruit. I still remember eating it." "When?" Bai Xiaowen was shocked. Delpha said, After Master became an evolver, I also gradually awakened some of my past memories. I'm sorry, Master, I don't remember when and under what circumstances I ate it, but I definitely ate it. This is a memory from a long time ago. Bai Xiaowen frowned and said, so, the awakening of your memories is accompanied by the growth of your strength? Delafa nodded. There seems to be such a pattern, but I'm not sure. Bai Xiaowen asked, do you really want to regain your memories? Delafa nodded after a moment of silence. Bai Xiaowen thought for a while and said, all right. I can give you the Queen of Banshees as your new host. Delafa was overjoyed. He knelt on one knee and said, my loyalty to you will never change. Bai Xiaowen waved his hand and said, I agree to your request for 2 reasons. Firstly, the Queen of Banshees should be able to fully unleash your strength. With a stronger carrier, it would be more beneficial for you to unleash your resurrection of the dead. Secondly, I'm also very curious about your past memories. This information related to ancient times and gods is also very important to me. After a pause, Bai Xiaowen asked, then, after you leave the descend state, what will happen to the original body of the soul catcher Banshee? Delafa said, she will lose the ability to cast Resurrection of the Dead alone. Because this ability required 3 soul catcher Banshees to chant at the same time in order to cast it. At the same time, the strength of this body will also fall to the level of an elite because of my combat experience. Bai Xiaowen nodded. Delafa hurriedly said, Master, you can now use a very small price to light up the Black Soul Stone. Oh, no, it's the other options in Death's Look. One of them is to increase the number of Soul Catcher Banshees. You can increase it by 2. After Bai Xiaowen became an evolver, he had been working hard to cultivate and improve his realm. The Black Soul Stone, Death's Look, which had accompanied him for a long time, did not make Bai Xiaowen put too much effort into it. He felt that Death's Look had lost its competitiveness and was not that important to him. Therefore, after accumulating a large number of soul essences, Bai Xiaowen did not think of directly lighting up the options to enhance the army of the undead summoned creatures. Thinking about it carefully, Death's Look was an item transformed from the death god's divinity after all. There should be a lot of secrets that could be uncovered. And the mysteries on the surface were the 8 layers of strengthening options. There were still many that had not been lit up. Bai Xiaowen asked directly, how many soul essences do you have now? Delafa, a total of 49,430. How? So many? Bai Xiaowen was a little surprised. This number was 10 times higher than he expected. Delafa explained, Master, the soul strength of an evolver-level creature is 10 times that of an awakened one. For example, after Master kills a level 11 elite creature, the soul essences produced are 110 points, not 11 points. It's the same for a leader creature. Bai Xiaowen silently calculated. Since he became an evolver, he had indeed killed many elites, leaders, and even lord-level enemies. If it was 10 times more, the number of soul essences would be about 50,000. In addition, after eliminating Death God Nigar, the number of soul essences needed to strengthen Death's Look had been halved. The reason was very simple. Bai Xiaowen had completely mastered the Black Soul Stone, Death's Look. There was no middleman to profit from the price difference. Bai Xiaowen calculated. The Black Soul Stone currently did not have any strengthening options. If you were to light up all of them, the total number of soul essences needed to be 14,225 points. Bai Xiaowen chose to light up all of them. He suddenly felt a sense of extravagance that he had never felt before. After that, there were about 35,000 soul essences left. These soul essences had other important uses. For example, they could use some of Death's Look's soul-related functions and strengthen friendly undead creatures. Now, Bai Xiaowen's summon creature army had once again expanded. The current statistics were 10 undead archers, 2 ghouls, 2 zombie dogs. Above that, there were 14 creatures with normal templates. Of course, with the strengthening options, as well as Bai Xiaowen's summoner bonus and spirit bonus, they were already equivalent to quasi-elite level strength. In other words, they had elite-level attributes but did not have the spiritual energy value or skills of an elite. 4 cataclysmic spider demons. 3 soul catcher banshees. 7 terror knights. 1 skeleton warrior, 1 shadow assassin, 1 demon lady. 1 skeleton giant. 1 vampire, kits. 1 skeleton giant. There were a total of 20 elite creatures. Among them, kits and the skeleton giant were rare elite level. Currently, elite creatures could only be considered cannon fodder. Bai Xiaowen still paid the most attention to creatures above the leader level. Chapter 1643. For the Death Knight, the 8th level of strengthening option gave it the Death Gangrene skill. For the Vampire Lord, the 8th level of strengthening option gave it the Night Embrace skill. For the Lich, the 8th level of strengthening option gave it the Bone Chilling Chill skill. These 3 strengthening options allowed the 3 leaders to become rare leaders. Their strength had increased. Moreover, Bai Xiaowen also received a new notification. Due to unknown reasons, you can now designate a leader, or higher template, undead creature to undergo special strengthening and evolve it into a leader. Note, for creatures of the same race, you can only choose one leader as the strengthening target. You can withdraw the strengthening ability from the target at any time. Unknown reason, Bai Xiaowen's gaze swept through and finally fell on a line of small words on his personal panel. Death's power, 10 out of 10. If there was a reason that the spiritual world's rules could not detect, it should be these 10 points of Death's power. This was the power that Bai Xiaowen obtained from the mysterious Black Book when he obtained another Death's Hand bone from the Bone Mound in the Tang Dynasty's underground tomb after annexing the Tang Dynasty territory. He never knew what the Death's power was used for, but now, it should be the first use, strengthening undead creatures and making them evolve. There were quite a few leaders that met the requirements. The top 3, the Death Knight, the Vampire Lord, and the Lich, came from the 7th level. There were also the Plague Behemoth, the Queen of Banshees, and the Frost Dragon from the 8th level. They were all rare leader creatures. In addition, there was a special existence, and that was the Butcher. After devouring the flesh of a high-ranking leader dinosaur, in addition to its previous accumulation, it had evolved into a leader. Unfortunately, it was still not a rare leader. Since the Death's power could make a leader evolve, Bai Xiaowen intended to make a selection. There were a total of 4 races for the undead, the Bone race, the Soul race, the Corpse Demon race, and the Blood race. Each race could only choose one leader to strengthen, making it an existence similar to the race's commander. Bai Xiaowen's understanding was to promote the 4 heavenly kings under the Death God. Thinking about it, as the 7th generation Death God, it was impossible for Nigar to take care of everything personally and pass down orders to the skeleton soldiers at the lowest level every time. He felt like he had become a demon king. The Soul race's selection is the simplest. After Delifa fuses with the Banshee Queen, he will become the Soul race's heavenly king. The others, be it Banshee Lady, Shadow Assassin, or the 3 Soul Catcher Banshees, are no match for him. Bai Xiaowen turned his head to the side and saw that Delifa was already attempting to fuse with the Queen of Banshees. A cloud of black mist enveloped the Queen of Banshees' body, and it seemed that he would not be able to complete it in a short period of time. Bai Xiaowen had a hard time thinking about the selection of the other 3 races. The competition for the Bone race was the fiercest. Needless to say, the Death Knight was a veteran employee, but the new Liches and Frost Dragons were also strong competitors. The Lich didn't have any intelligence yet. It stood there in a daze like a skeleton, and a chilling aura lingered around its body. The Frost WYRM was actually the skeleton of a WYRM. Inside the skeleton, there was pale white soul energy. It was this soul energy that revived the dead WYRM from its grave. Therefore, the Frost WYRM was also called the Abyss Dragon. Bai Xiaowen considered for a moment and decided to give the Bone race's Heavenly King spot to the Death Knight. Apart from the bonus points given to veteran employees, the additional 7 Terror Knights behind the Death Knight were also important factors. Bai Xiaowen wanted to try the use of the power of death, so he experimented on the Death Knight. He designated the Death Knight and strengthened it with his mind. The black energy ball of death's power in Bai Xiaowen's sea of consciousness quickly began to circulate. It shot out from Bai Xiaowen's fingertip and fused into the Death Knight's glabella. In an instant, an invisible ripple spread out, and a creaking sound could be heard. The Death Knight's skeletal body rapidly expanded along with its horse. Finally, it became a knight that was more than 3 meters tall. Its entire body was covered in pitch-black armor, and the soul fire in its eye sockets turned from pale white to scarlet red. A powerful aura was emitted from his body. Bai Xiaowen's power of death also quickly became 0 out of 10. It's done. Bai Xiaowen hurriedly checked the Death Knight's attribute panel. Death Knight, Lord level 14, race, undead/bone race, attributes, strength 184, agility 102, vitality 177, spirit 51, health, 100%, spiritual energy, 2300, it had been upgraded to the Lord level. Was the power of death so useful? Bai Xiaowen was surprised and happy. From a leader to a lord, it was a qualitative change. However, because there was no skill bar, the Death Knight's skills could not be seen through the eye of evolution. However, Bai Xiaowen had another way, which was to share memories and read the Death Knight's memories. The Death Knight's subjective consciousness was at the level of a 3-year-old child. It could be said to be quite pure, and there were not many messy memories. Bai Xiaowen could easily find the memory fragments related to the learned skills. Army Charge, Blasphemy, Withering Entanglement. These skills still exist, but due to the strengthening of the power of death, the power and range of the skills have increased. Other than that, the skill Necrosis is worth noting. Necrosis was an additional skill given to the Death Knight by the level 8 option. After being strengthened by the power of death, it became the ability to permanently transform a life form infected with necrosis into an undead servant of the bone race. Bai Xiaowen instantly thought that this was definitely a special skill after being selected as the leader of the race. From then on, the Death Knight Lord, as the heavenly king of the bone race, could rely on the necrosis skill to continuously create undead servants of the bone race and strengthen Bai Xiaowen's undead army. One could imagine that if the power of death was used to strengthen a lich or a frost dragon, it would probably give birth to a similar special skill of the leader of the race. Unfortunately, in a race such as the bone race, there could only be one leader of the race. The Death Knight Lord's strength was given by Bai Xiaowen's power of death, and was not considered his own strength. In fact, this was a type of God's favor, but Bai Xiaowen had not seen God's favor yet. Otherwise, he would have understood immediately why the Death Knight suddenly became a lord. If Bai Xiaowen used the power of death to strengthen the lich, then the Death Knight's strengthening ability would be taken back, and its template would fall back to the rare leader level. The lich would replace it and become the new heavenly king of the bone race. However, Bai Xiaowen further thought that the other 3 races should be able to select a heavenly king. In other words, he could strengthen the 4 leaders to the lord level. Chapter 1644. But before that, Bai Xiaowen first bestowed the new Death Knight Lord with the first orifice fruit. After confirming that he could select the leaders of the 4 tribes, Bai Xiaowen had already decided on the use of the 3 enlightenment fruits. He would use them on the 4 heavenly kings so that they would have enough wisdom to take charge of their own affairs. Among them, the soul race's heavenly king Delifa did not need the enlightenment fruit, so he could save one. The Death Knight Lord ate the enlightenment fruit. Using the word eaten didn't seem too appropriate. According to common sense, Death Knights were bone race clansmen, so no matter what they ate or drank, they would directly pass through their throat. They didn't have the concept of eating, unlike the corpse monster race. However, after the Death Knight Lord opened his mouth and stuffed the enlightenment fruit into his mouth and chewed, the enlightenment fruit turned into a pale white stream of light and directly merged into his soul fire. In the next second, the scarlet soul fire in the Death Knight Lord's eyes trembled violently. His tall and thick skeleton body also bent his knees and sat down. After about 10 minutes, the Death Knight Lord stood up again. The soul fire in his eye sockets flickered slightly more than before. This was the manifestation of his mind thinking. Great ruler. The Death Knight Lord used his spiritual energy to speak. He knelt down on one knee in front of Bai Xiaowen and performed a knight's etiquette. After careful consideration, he changed the way he addressed Bai Xiaowen to ruler. Bai Xiaowen did not care about the specific title. Whether it was ruler, master, or lord, it was enough to confirm the Death Knight Lord's loyalty. Now that his intelligence had just increased, the Death Knight Lord's loyalty to Bai Xiaowen was naturally 100%. However, as time passed, the Death Knight Lord would have more personal thoughts because of thinking. He would judge everything based on his own values. At that time, he might not be able to maintain 100% loyalty forever. However, only in this way could the Death Knight Lord unlock the ability to cultivate independently and have higher growth potential. Moreover, he would have the wisdom to take charge of an undead race alone. This was the purpose of Bai Xiaowen giving him the enlightenment fruit. As for loyalty, Bai Xiaowen was not worried. Everything the Death Knight Lord had was bestowed by him, including the Lord class strength strengthened by the Death God's power. In addition, the Death Knight Lord still had to rely on the Grim Reaper's countenance to exist. Rise, Death Knight Lord. Let me give you a name. Calling you Death Knight Lord is a bit too awkward. In the future, if you want to be independent, you have to have a name. The Death Knight Lord stood up, his spirit energy vibrating as his synthesized voice echoed in the air. To be bestowed a name by the Lord is my honor. This. Jinmi, who was watching from the side with great interest, raised her small hand and said, Husband, Sisterly once said that husband is not suitable for naming. Really? Bai Xiaowen rubbed his chin and said, Isn't a name just a code? The most convenient way is to use numbers. Like 11 and 22? Jinmi said with a smile, My husband, you'd better be careful. If you intend to let the Death Knight Lord take charge of the situation alone. A name that is too casual will make people look down on you. That makes sense. Bai Xiaowen pondered for a moment and said, Oh, I got it. I'll call you Abaddon. Is it a transliteration of Abaddon? Hell, Jinmi said with a smile. It really doesn't take much thinking to come up with a name like this. Bai Xiaowen was not surprised that Jinmi knew English. After transcending from the three kingdoms, she had been learning all kinds of useful knowledge and skills for more than half a year on Earth, and English was one of them. Bai Xiaowen just smiled. Abaddon was the name of a hero in the game Dota in the Christian era, but there was no need to explain this origin to Jinmi. The soul fire in the Death Knight Lord's eye sockets flickered, and there was a subtle change in his aura. Thank the Great Lord for giving me a real name. Death Knight Abaddon will be the sharpest spear and the strongest shield of the Lord, sweeping away all obstacles for the Lord. Being called Lord by Abaddon was indeed a little chinibu, but it was inevitable that he would be arrogant if he changed the title, such as Master or Young Master, so Bai Xiaowen just let him be. Okay, Abaddon, from now on, you will rule the Bone Tribe for me. Bai Xiaowen gestured for Abaddon to step aside. The soul fire in the eyes of the Lich and the Frost Wyrm fluctuated greatly. Even the Lich and the Frost Wyrm with low self-awareness were instinctively jealous of Abaddon's good fortune. After all, they were all leaders of the Bone Tribe, so why would he be favored by the Lord and obtain such great power? For the Lich and the Frost Wyrm, the power after becoming the Bone Tribe's heavenly king was not attractive, mainly because of their low self-awareness, but their desire for power was instinctive. Bai Xiaowen did not mind the jealousy between his subordinates. With jealousy, there was motivation, and with motivation, there was progress. As long as there was no obvious internal friction, let them be. The Lich and the Frost Wyrm had not eaten the opening fruit, so their self-awareness was low. Abaddon was one step ahead, so it was impossible that he could not control them. The only worry was that Abaddon would make things difficult for them and bully them too much. Of course, these two underlings were both summoned creatures that belonged to Death's visage. Even if Abaddon bullied them, he would at most make them suffer a little. Even if he schemed to kill these two underlings, Bai Xiaowen could still revive them. It was impossible for them to truly disappear. Moreover, according to Bai Xiaowen's observation, Abaddon's self-awareness after he grew up was quite upright. He was the Dark Knight type, similar to Gloria. With such a self-awareness, the possibility of him bullying his underlings was not high. On the other side, Delpha's fusion also ended. The newborn Queen of Banshees appeared in front of Bai Xiaowen after the black fog dissipated. Now, he could no longer call Delpha the Queen of Banshees because her image had changed greatly. She was a bit like an enlarged version of the Valkyrie before Delpha. There was no trace of the evil Banshee with blood-red eyes from before. Bai Xiaowen said, "Delpha, is your fusion complete? Did you remember anything?" Delpha's expression was a bit confused. She said to Bai Xiaowen, "Master, some messy images have appeared in my mind. It's like a reflection in the water. The more I try to recall, the more chaotic the images are. I can't see clearly at all." Bai Xiaowen frowned and used the memory sharing to look through it. He found that it was as Delpha said. He could not see the new images clearly at all. Chapter 1645. I'm sorry. I failed to live up to Master's expectations, Delpha said with his hands lowered. Bai Xiaowen shook his head. It's not your fault. Perhaps these sealed memories were too shocking, so much so that they were passively hidden in Delpha's subconscious. Because of this, Bai Xiaowen was even more curious about these memories. Don't be in a hurry to give up. There's still a way, Bai Xiaowen said. I'll promote you to the leader of the soul race, and you'll advance to the overlord level. When the time comes, the images in your mind should become clearer. Delpha hurriedly thanked him. Bai Xiaowen's 10 points of death's power had been used up, but he knew how to obtain them again. He used his quintessential essence to inject it into his sea of consciousness and tried to flip through the black book. As expected, the black book devoured the quintessential essence that Bai Xiaowen injected bit by bit. After swallowing 100 points, it formed a pure black energy ball again. Bai Xiaowen's power of death became 10 out of 10 again. Then, he chose Delpha as the target to strengthen his mind. The power of death was also injected into Delpha's glabella. Delpha's strengthening took a little longer. It took a full 20 minutes before the strengthening was completed. Her body also expanded, turning into a 2-meter-tall female giant with pale wings on her back. She wore a black helmet, and her long indigo-purple hair flowed down. Her healthy and strong body was only wrapped in a simple black breastplate and armbands, revealing her firm abdominal muscles. A thick black belt inlaid with skulls covered her waist and abdomen. This made Bai Xiaowen a little curious. Did Delpha have 8-pack abs? However, Bai Xiaowen was too embarrassed to ask Delpha to take off her belt to see her abs in front of Jinmi. Delpha, who was originally somewhat gentle and beautiful, had turned into a strong and fit female Viking warrior after being selected as the soul's heavenly king. Bai Xiaowen did not know if there were female Viking warriors in history, but if there were, Bai Xiaowen felt that they should be like Delpha. Of course, Bai Xiaowen was not prejudiced against all kinds of beautiful styles. Whether she was petite and cute, tall and gentle, or strong and fit, he could appreciate her charm. Using Eye of Evolution, Delpha's attributes had also been greatly enhanced. Delpha, Overlord Level 14, Race, Undead/Soul, Attributes, STR 122, DX 164, Constitution 107, Spirit 178, Health, 100% Spiritual Energy Value, 2500. Compared to the Death Knight, Delpha's attributes tended to be more balanced. Among them, the highest was still Spirit, but there was not much difference between Dexterity and Spirit. His 120+ strength was also considerable. This meant that Delpha's close combat ability was also very strong. He was the type of person who cultivated both magic and martial arts. From the comparison of the spiritual energy value, it could be seen that Delpha's strength was stronger than the Death Knight Overlord Abaddon. They were both level 14 overlords, but Abaddon's spiritual energy value was only 2,300 points. Bai Xiaowen asked about Delifa's skills. Apart from the skills such as Mind Shriek and Fog of Erosion that he originally had as the Queen of Banshees, Delifa also had a leader's skill, Darkness Absorption. Darkness Absorption was to absorb negative energy and create undead servants of the soul race. There were two types of absorption of negative energy. For living beings, it referred to the energy produced by absorbing the target's despair, pain, hatred, and other negative emotions. For non-living beings, dark creatures, it referred to the absorption of the residual dark energy in the target's body after their death. Both of these could be used to create soul race servants, such as ordinary template wraiths, elite template wraiths, banshees, and so on. This depended on the quality of darkness absorption. Delifa, your template has been upgraded from leader to lord. Have your memories become clearer after your strength has increased? Bai Xiaowen asked. Delifa's face, which was covered by the black helmet, revealed a smile. Yes, Master. I remember my real name. My real name is Sig Delifa. Sig Delifa? Bai Xiaowen recalled for a moment. I remember, when Death God Nigar appeared in Guangchengzi's cave abode, which was connected to the Three Kingdoms plane, he once called out this name. Sig Delifa nodded. Yes, Master. However, at that time, I didn't think of this name and the weight it carries. The weight it carries? Delifa stretched out his palm. The memories I remember are not very coherent. It's a long story. Master, please use memory sharing to read them yourself. This way, you will be able to see them more clearly. Bai Xiaowen held Sig Delifa's hand and closed his eyes. Memory sharing was activated, and Bai Xiaowen's consciousness sneaked into Sig Delifa's memories. The newly unlocked images from Sig Delifa's subconscious were reflected in Bai Xiaowen's eyes. This was a vast battlefield. The sun and the moon were dim, and the stars were whimpering as they fell. Many tall and burly figures, like gods, were riding light, lightning, and other supernatural energies, shuttling back and forth in the universe. A group of 3-meter-tall goddesses with wings on their backs blew their horns and pointed their spears of war downward. Below, under these incomparably tall figures, thousands of armies were fighting each other. The memories came to an abrupt end. Delifa Sig said apologetically, I'm sorry, Master. This is all I can remember now. Bai Xiaowen nodded slightly and said, Actually, I've always had a guess about you. After a pause, Bai Xiaowen said, in the mythology of the Common Era, there was the name Sig Delifa. She was one of the Valkyries in Norse mythology. The so-called Valkyries were actually women who chose to die in battle. Legend has it that they were of noble birth and would give the brave warriors who died in battle a final kiss on the battlefield. Their souls would be brought to Odin's Hall of Valor to expand their military strength to deal with the twilight of the gods. Delifa Sig was at a loss. Seeing that his narration did not make Sig Delifa recall more, Bai Xiaowen could only shake his head and say, Your name was originally called Sig. Originally, your name was Delifer, and you said that your original class was the Valkyrie. I once thought that perhaps your predecessor was the Valkyrie, and these dusty memories were actually the war called Ragnarok. However, this doesn't explain why you became the subordinate of the god of death, Nigar. If it were the Norse gods, the person in charge of the god of death should be Odin's daughter, Hela. At this point, Bai Xiaowen added, Of course, Nigar claimed to be the 7th god of death, so Hela should be the god of death before him. No matter what, this information is very crucial. It might involve the truth of the Psionic era. Chapter 1646. Delifa Sig was Bai Xiaowen's second tribe leader, the sole heavenly king. Putting Sig Delifa's past aside, Bai Xiaowen deliberated for a moment before choosing the leader of the Corpse Shifter tribe. There were 2 candidates for the Corpse Shifter tribe. One was Butcher, who had just been promoted to leader rank and had contributed greatly to Bai Xiaowen. The other was a new creature that had just appeared from Death's Countenance, a rare leader rank plague beast. The plague beast was an enlarged, fatter version of a lizard. Its body was more than 5 meters long, and its forelegs were as short as tree stumps. It had a long tail, and its back was full of sarcomas. Its skills were all related to poison gas. The sarcomas on its back could close or open at will to release poison gas. In the poison gas, the plague beast's health points would recover very quickly, while the enemy would be affected by the corrosive plague. Apart from that, the plague beast could also spit out highly concentrated acid from its mouth or shake its huge body to throw out parasitic poisonous insects to attack. Finally, there was a skill called vomit corpse. The plague beast could swallow corpses and vomit them out after a while. The corpses that were vomited out would become acid zombies of the corpse shifter tribe. However, the health points of the acid zombies would automatically decrease due to corrosion, leaving behind a puddle of acid on the ground after they died. From the looks of it, the plague beast had the potential to be a tribe leader. It naturally had the ability to create corpse shifter servants, zombies, but they were not permanent servants. However, Bai Xiaowen did not choose the plague beast. He still chose Butcher. Being an experienced employee was the first bonus. Besides, Butcher's modified stomach did indeed have greater growth potential. As for the plague beast, he would put it aside for the time being. After Bai Xiaowen injected 10 points of death's power into Butcher, he completed his evolution in 10 minutes. Then, he was named Paji by Bai Xiaowen. Paji, Lord level 14, race, undead/corpse shifter tribe, attributes, 168 STR, 95 DX, 204 HP, 66 INT, health, 100%, sorcery, 2300. After his evolution, Butcher Paji had turned from a fat man to an extremely sturdy and muscular giant. He was 2.5 meters tall, and his shoulders were nearly 2 meters wide. His legs were as thick as pillars, and his lower body was extremely sturdy. His arms were almost as thick as his thighs, and that was where his astonishing 168 points of strength came from. On his bulging belly, the original suture marks had disappeared and were replaced by strong abdominal muscles. A thick iron chain was wrapped around his waist. A deformed arm extended from behind his shoulder, holding the end of the iron chain. His left and right hands each held a kitchen knife. After feeding Butcher Paji a clearing fruit, Paji's dead fish eyes became lively again. Although his actions still couldn't hide his rudeness, the Butcher's intelligence had indeed grown to a level where he wouldn't lose to an ordinary person. Apart from the strengthening of his previous skills, Butcher Paji also obtained the pack leader skill, Stitch. The deformed arm on his back looked clumsy, but it was actually very nimble. He could use the kitchen knife in both hands to chop open a corpse, then choose the useful parts and use the deformed arm on his back to control the resentment threads to stitch them up, creating an eternal corpse shifter slave. There was only one spot left for the blood breed leader. Kits looked at Bai Xiaowen with eager eyes. "Don't look. Who told you to be so useless, unable to break through to the leader rank?" Bai Xiaowen shook his head. The prerequisite to becoming a pack leader was to be a pack leader. As a rare elite, Kits couldn't become a pack leader. How long would it take for him to advance to the next rank? Kits knelt down with a thud, holding his head as he cried out half-jokingly, "Boss, I'm useless. Let the newcomer be the pack leader. I have no complaints." Shinmi couldn't stand it anymore. After all, the skeleton team led by Kits had helped Shinmi a lot when the territory was first established. However, Shinmi wouldn't persuade Bai Xiaowen to change his mind. As a good wife, she was the one to counsel Kits. Calling Kits to the side, Shinmi said softly, "Actually, you don't have to be sad. In my opinion, it might be better if you don't become the blood breed leader." After a pause, Shinmi continued, "Now that my husband has chosen the leaders of the 4 great clans, they are equivalent to 4 feudal officials. And you have always been by my husband's side, so you are a close subject of the emperor. Although the feudal officials have great power, they still have to be respectful when facing the emperor's close subjects. Moreover, as a close subject, you don't have to fight on the front lines. You can pass down orders, and you can experience the style of an imperial envoy. After becoming Bai Xiaowen's summoned creature, Kits also understood some of the ancient Huaxia culture. Xin Mi's words enlightened him. Madam is right. Sure enough, boss trusts me the most, so I can stay by his side. Bai Xiaowen called over the newly added summoned creature, the Vampire Lord. First, he injected the power of the Grim Reaper to strengthen it, and then fed it the Enlightenment fruit. After the Vampire Lord finished evolving and gained intelligence, Bai Xiaowen said, I will bestow upon you a true name. Vladimir. The Vampire Lord Vladimir bowed. I am extremely honored by your bestowment of a name. Vladimir will always be loyal to you, Great Master. As usual, Bai Xiaowen learned about the Vampire Lord's abilities. Vladimir, Lord level 14, race, undead/blood breed, attributes, 119 strength, 211 agility, 102 spirit, 94 health, 100% spiritual power, 2300. Vladimir was an out-and-out speed-type lord. His passive claw attack could restore his health, and he had the ability to transform into a swarm of golden bats to escape. His survivability was extremely strong. In addition, he could also release golden bats for long-distance reconnaissance. Another thing to mention was Vladimir's clan leader skill, Night Embrace, which could be used on living beings to create vampire servants. From the outside, Vladimir's body shape was the most normal of the four heavenly kings. He was about 1.7 meters tall, had slightly thin cheeks, and wore a meticulous aristocratic attire, similar to the Death Knight's horse, clothing condensed from spiritual power. He was much more impressive than Kits. Of course, this was only his body shape before he transformed. After transforming, Vladimir's height would quickly increase to more than 2 meters, like a thin bamboo pole, and he would reveal sharp fangs and claws. The other three heavenly kings could also transform back to their normal bodies. However, their normal bodies would limit the four heavenly kings' ability to use part of their strength. If they really encountered a big battle, they would still have to transform into their true forms. We will always be loyal to the Great Master who gave us life. The four heavenly kings knelt on one knee in front of Bai Xiaowen and swore their loyalty. Chapter 1647. Bai Xiaowen had originally wanted to give Sheiji an opening fruit, but he couldn't do so now. He had already used up all of them. After all, the intelligence of the four heavenly kings, who were the leaders of their races, had to be guaranteed. Sheiji wasn't the leader of her race. She had always followed Bai Xiaowen and followed his orders. She didn't have high intelligence for the time being, so it didn't matter. At this moment, the four heavenly kings had returned to their normal size. In this size, they could unleash 60 to 70% of their strength. The Bone Race's heavenly king Abaddon's normal size was a 2-meter-tall, burly knight covered in armor. The Corpse Race's, Corpse Demon Race's, heavenly king Paji's normal size was a 1.9-meter-tall burly man with a square body. The Soul Race's heavenly king Delafahiga's normal size was 1.8-meter-tall, with abs that put ordinary people to shame. He was tall and fit. The Vampire Race's heavenly king Vladimir's normal size was 1.7-meter tall, and he was a slightly gloomy noble old gentleman. Behind the four heavenly kings were the summoned creatures of the other undead races. According to their race, they were under the command of the four heavenly kings. The Bone Race's lineup was the strongest. They had 2 leaders, the Lich and the Frost Dragon, 9 elites with the Terror Knight as the main body, and 10 Necromancer archers. The Corpse Race's lineup was ranked second. Standing behind the Butcher Paji was the Plague Behemoth, 4 elite cataclysmic spider demons, and 4 ordinary models of ghouls and zombie dogs. The Soul Race's lineup was ranked third. Delafahiga commanded 3 soul-sucking banshees and a shadow assassin. He was talking about the evil lady here. She was a demon, a ghost, and not an undead. If the demon lady grew into a leader model, Bai Xiaowen could try to use the death god's power to strengthen her. But she was only an elite now, so she was temporarily under Della Fahiga's command. The weakest faction was the Blood Race. Behind the vampire lord Vladimir, there was only the lone Kits. Vladimir, who had gained intelligence, didn't dare to treat Kits as a subordinate that he could assign at will. After all, Kits was much more senior than him. Basically, Vladimir was a commander without an army. Of course, this was only temporary. Vladimir placed his right hand on his chest and his left hand behind his back. He bowed impeccably to Bai Xiaowen and said, "Great Master, please allow me to choose a suitable human to perform the Night Embrace ceremony to expand the military strength of your army." As soon as he said this, the leaders of the other 3 tribes could no longer sit still. "Abaddon, the ruler's army is not strong enough. We need to summon more bone race servants to protect the sovereign's rule." Sig Delafa, Master, the servants of the Soul Tribe, be it warriors or spellcasters, are the best. Currently, we need to expand our army. Butcher Pachi said, Master needs more corpses that can move. Pudge will make more for Master. At this time, Bai Xiaowen had also investigated and found out what was going on with the undead servants, that the 4 heavenly kings were expanding their armies. The undead servants created by the 4 heavenly kings through Night Embrace, Dark Absorption, Suture, and Necrosis could not be considered Bai Xiaowen's summoned creatures. There was an old saying in the West, "The vassals of my vassals are not my vassals." Bai Xiaowen could not summon the undead servants created by the 4 heavenly kings through Death's appearance. He could not control them through Mind Link. Moreover, these created undead servants could not be revived infinitely through Death's appearance. Of course, these undead servants would still maintain absolute respect for Bai Xiaowen, the owner of Death's appearance. Ignoring Bai Xiaowen's absolute control over the 4 heavenly kings, just the pressure of the undead from Death's appearance was enough. Another advantage was that Bai Xiaowen could still use the soul essence accumulated in Death's appearance to strengthen these undead servants. From the looks of it, the undead army was much more useful than the White Phoenix Domain's 5-banner division army. It also suited Bai Xiaowen's style more. The 4 heavenly kings were eager to expand their army and serve Bai Xiaowen. This enthusiasm was commendable. However, Bai Xiaowen still had to restrain them to a certain extent. Bai Xiaowen said, "I understand your thoughts. However, in the White Phoenix Domain, without my permission, no one is allowed to create undead servants." The 4 heavenly kings acknowledged the order at the same time. Bai Xiaowen then said, "You don't have to worry. There will definitely be opportunities to expand the army in the future. The enemy troops who died in battle or were captured in the Domain War, the heinous people in the spirit realm like the Black Sky Sect, they can all be used by me." This was also Bai Xiaowen's bottom line. He would not use the lives of innocent people to expand his army. The 4 heavenly kings acknowledged respectfully. Bai Xiaowen thought for a moment and said, "Originally, I planned to carry out the next step of the plan when my strength improved. However, this time, the unexpected power of death allowed me to obtain the leaders of 4 tribes. They all have the strength of mid-level feudal lords. The White Phoenix Domain's strength has greatly increased. Then, the plan can be brought forward. Master, please instruct us." The 4 heavenly kings said at the same time. Bai Xiaowen said, "If the White Phoenix Domain wants to grow stronger, it must attack other plane worlds and secret planets and seize a large amount of resources from them. The next step of my plan is to attack the Shaowei plane and completely turn this plane into the backyard of the White Phoenix Domain." Conquering planar worlds was something that many old territories were doing. The Shaowei plane was the goal of the Great Tang Domain. It was also the first step of the Great Tang Domain's revival. Even the resonance transmission array that connected to the plane was successfully set up. However, Bai Xiaowen interfered and the Great Tang Domain was destroyed. The Shaowei plane was still in a state where there was no territory to attack. At that time, Bai Xiaowen had thoughts about the Shaowei plane and also made a few arrangements. However, the White Phoenix Domain was very weak at that time and there was the threat of war from the Great Tang Domain. The plan to attack the Xiaowei Plain was temporarily put on hold. Now that the White Phoenix domain's strength had greatly increased, the Great Tang domain had also disappeared. Bai Xiaowen also obtained the key item of the resonance transmission array from the dinosaur planet in the Wuya region, the source of spiritual power. The time had come. Bai Xiaowen had an advantage in the Xiaowei Plain. His ally, Chen Rong, was the head of the Shangqing school. His biggest opponent, the Black Sky Cult, had already been eliminated. Taking down the Xiaowei Plain could endlessly absorb the talents of various industries, precious materials, large amounts of spirit crystals, and so on. The benefits were endless. And after taking down the Xiaowei Plain, the dinosaur planet, Wuya Secret Realm, was Bai Xiaowen's next target. As a high-level secret realm, the dinosaur planet's degree of wealth far exceeded the Xiaowei Plain. It should be mentioned here that when Bai Xiaowen first cut in, the Xiaowei Plain was only a low-level plane. Only evolvers below level 13 were allowed to enter. However, as the war progressed in the Xiaowei Plain, this plane had been upgraded to a mid-level plane. Mid-level evolvers were allowed to enter. For example, the Uncle Su beside Li Feng was a mid-level evolver. Therefore, Bai Xiaowen, who had just advanced to level 14, could also enter the Xiaowei Plain. Chapter 1648. Bai Xiaowen had made ample preparations for his trip to the Xiaowei Plain this time. Spirit crystals, spiritual materials, sources of spiritual power, and large amounts of gold and silver ingots that had been successfully smelted were piled up into a small mountain in Bai Xiaowen's storage bracelet. Without the territory as a backup, it was impossible for a single post-human to conquer a plane with the strength of a single post-human. Of course, Bai Xiaowen could not be equated to a single post-human. After the newly promoted heavenly kings of the four major clans were bestowed with intelligence, Bai Xiaowen already had the backbone of an army. Many things could be handed over to the four heavenly kings to handle. "Husband, aren't you going to wait for Sister Shi and the others to come back?" Xinmi asked before leaving. Xinmi did not say one more thing. If something happened to Li Shi and the others on the dinosaur planet, Bai Xiaowen would be too far away to rescue them in the Xiaowei Plain. Bai Xiaowen smiled and shook his head. "I believe in my companions." Li Shi, Han Su, and Cecilia were already mid-level heroes. They had considerable strength and were not reckless in their actions. They were not children who needed Bai Xiaowen to clean up their messes for them. As for whether the other territories would target the three of them, the answer was no. If Bai Xiaowen continued to stay on the dinosaur planet, it was possible that he would be ambushed by forces with ulterior motives. After all, he was the lord and the leader of the forces. After capturing and killing him, the White Phoenix territory would no longer have to fear him. However, Bai Xiaowen had already returned to the territory. Under the circumstances where he had confirmed his safety, there was no benefit for the other territories to target Bai Xiaowen's companions other than angering Bai Xiaowen and completely opposing the White Phoenix territory. Jinmi also understood this point. As long as nothing happened to her husband, everyone in the territory would have someone to rely on. She urged Bai Xiaowen to stay because she hoped that he could stay for a few more days. After waving goodbye to Jinmi, Bai Xiaowen stepped into the territory's teleportation gate. Xiaowei Plain. The teleportation began. Xiaowei Plain, Dongting Lake, a pleasure boat. You still know to come back." Chenrong said angrily, "It's been a year. Where the hell did you go? If it wasn't for me stopping them, your guest elder position would have long been lost." In the past year, she had been worried about the safety of LV Wang because the last time LV Wang went back, he said that his territory was going to war with another veteran territory. It was a war of life and death. There had been no news from him for a year. One could imagine the torment in Chenrong's heart. Several times, she wanted to take the pass that LV Wang gave her and teleport to LV Wang's territory. Even if LV Wang's territory had been destroyed, she still wanted to confirm whether LV Wang was still alive. But in the end, she couldn't make up her mind to leave everything behind. She had just become the headmaster, and her position was not stable yet. She couldn't leave rashly. If LV Wang died, the territory would be occupied by the enemy, and she would be trapped. Shangqing's school would be finished. Bai Xiaowen felt a little awkward. He didn't expect the world in Xiaowei Plain to be so fast. It was almost a 3-to-1 ratio with the Interstellar Alliance. After leaving Xiaowei Plain, Bai Xiaowen first fought a war with the Tang territory. After annexing the Tang territory, he went into seclusion to cultivate for 2 to 3 months. Then, he went to the dinosaur planet. In fact, only 4 months had passed, but a year had passed in Xiaowei Plain. Compared to a year ago, Chenrong's temperament was more mature. She had shed the naivety of a young girl. Her speech and actions had the dignity of a headmaster of a large sect. Her strength had also improved greatly. She had climbed to level 15, and her template was a rare overlord. She was on her way to becoming a king. Her strength was only slightly inferior to that of the Black Sky Cult leader, level 15 king. She had completely surpassed the few elders of Shangqing School. This was also an important reason why her position as headmaster was gradually stabilized. The reason for such a leap in strength was actually because of the destruction of the Black Sky Cult. The war process, the process of unification, of Xiaowei Plain had been pushed forward. This was similar to the Three Kingdoms Plain world. After Liu Bei seized the 2 rivers and became the king of Hanzhong, his level had rapidly climbed to level 9. It was all a cheat secretly given to the natives by the rules of the spiritual realm in accordance with the process of unification. Taking a step back, this strange 3 times faster time flow was also a kind of evidence. As the headmaster of Shangqing School, Chenrong had already honed her bearing and wisdom in a year's time. Her reunion with Bai Xiaowen had caused her to temporarily lose her composure. However, after the initial excitement, she calmed down and resumed the graceful and noble bearing of a headmaster. "Sorry, I lost my composure." Chenrong took a deep breath. "You have your freedom. I shouldn't be too harsh on you, and I have no reason to ask about your whereabouts. You must have something to do this time." "That's right." Chenrong had already seen through Bai Xiaowen. This heartless lover with a broken conscience was definitely not here to see her. However, when Chenrong said that I have no reason to ask about Bai Xiaowen's whereabouts, it was actually a question of death. If Bai Xiaowen really did not tell Chenrong the whole story of what had happened in the past year, he was afraid that his favorability would plummet. Chenrong was the key to conquering Xiaowei Plain. She was also the headmaster of a large sect. He could not give up on her favorability. When it came to real interests, Bai Xiaowen's brain worked quickly, and his EQ also became extremely high. Let me explain first. Actually, I only left for 4 months. Looking at Chenrong's surprised and inquiring eyes, Bai Xiaowen said, "I don't know if you've heard of the saying a day in heaven is a year on earth." Chenrong shook her head. "I've never heard of it." Bai Xiaowen's face stiffened. Only then did he remember that this saying seemed to have originated from the Ming dynasty's journey to the west. It was normal for people from the Song dynasty not to have heard of it. Bai Xiaowen could only explain sincerely, "My territory is an uncivilized land. The flow of time is different from this world. Last time, after destroying the Black Sky sect, I returned to my territory and defeated my opponent in a big battle. Then, I went to another arcane realm to explore. In total, only 4 months have passed." This is definitely true. Chenrong was a little incredulous. Why is it like this? The flow of time is different. Why is it that it's accelerated on my side? Chenrong clenched her fists. The flow of time on her side was 3 times faster. Didn't that mean that when she became an old woman, Bai Xiaowen was still in his prime? How could she tolerate this? Bai Xiaowen said with a smile, "Don't worry. I have a way to make the flow of time on both sides be the same." "What way?" Bai Xiaowen said, "You just need to build a teleportation array and connect it to my territory." Bai Xiaowen had experience with this. The world of the Awakened also had time acceleration, but when the Awakened were in the corresponding world, the flow of time in that world would slow down and be the same as on Earth. Building a teleportation array would allow Xiaowen's surface world to be connected to the Starlink's main material world. There would be a close connection between the two, and there would be frequent exchanges of personnel. Naturally, time would not accelerate. Chapter 1649. Bai Xiaowen smiled and said, "Actually, before this, the Black Sky sect had cooperated with another uncivilized land, which is my enemy, to build a resonance teleportation array formation. Because of this, there was the incident of 200 underworld demon army and 200 giant barbarian soldiers besieging the Shanqing school. That enemy, is it the force that declared war against your territory this time?" Qinrong asked. Bai Xiaowen nodded. "If that's the case, then that teleportation array formation should still be usable?" Qinrong reacted quickly. Bai Xiaowen shook his head and said, "My enemy, Tang territory, has already been destroyed. As one end of the resonance array formation is missing, the resonance array formation is equivalent to being abandoned. Of course, the abandoned array formation can also be repaired, but it requires some rare and precious materials, as well as the assistance of array formation experts. Actually, the so-called repair was to use a new source of spirit energy, combine with some spiritual materials and spirit crystals, and reposition the original resonance with the Tang territory's teleportation gate to the White Phoenix territory's teleportation gate." Qinrong said decisively, "What the Black Sky sect can do, I can do as well. Even building a new resonance array formation is not a problem, let alone repairing it." Bai Xiaowen smiled and said, "Of course, this will require the strength of the Shanqing school, but I have already made the preliminary preparations. In these few months, I have already collected most of the precious materials needed." The most precious material was, of course, the source of spirit energy. Qinrong's mood was slightly agitated, and he started to fill in the gaps in his imagination. Alan just said that he went to the mystic realm to explore. Could it be that he has been working hard to collect the materials for the resonance array formation this year? He should know about the problem of the flow of time, so he has been trying to find a way to solve it. This year. Oh no, it has only been a few months for Alan, he has not forgotten me? Bai Xiaowen suddenly felt that the little bit of resentment in great sect leader Chen's heart had disappeared, and there was a faint glimmer in his eyes as he looked at him. Bai Xiaowen? Fortunately, Qinrong was different from other girls. She was a strong woman with a high position as the sect leader. Even if she was momentarily moved, she would not let her emotions affect her decisions. "LV Wang, you have not answered my initial question." Qinrong said slowly, "Why are you here this time?" Bai Xiaowen said, "Haven't I already?" "To build the resonance array formation." "Qinrong, I know. However, before I help you build the resonance array formation, I need to ask. Why are you building this resonance array formation?" "It's for me?" "It's definitely for me." Qinrong's words said silently. He said, I Xiaowen. While absorbing the nutrients of this world and strengthening my territory, I can also contribute to the cause of justice in this world. This is my wish. Full marks, Bai Xiaowen cheered for himself in his heart. It's rare to see a young man like me who is honest and unpretentious. Qinrong was silent for a second, then said slowly, "Righteous cause? What do you mean? Is it the war between good and evil? The Black Sky sect has obviously been destroyed." Bai Xiaowen waved his hands. "No, the Black Sky sect is only a small part of the chronic disease of this world. Do you remember the tree demon we killed at the ancient Buddha temple? There are still many fiendish demons in this world." After a pause, Bai Xiaowen said, "Apart from the fiendish demons, there are actually even greater hidden dangers." "Greater hidden dangers?" Bai Xiaowen nodded and emphasized, "That's right. In comparison, the damage caused by the fiendish demons and the Black Sky sect is negligible." Qinrong's face became serious. "What kind of hidden dangers are they?" Bai Xiaowen sighed in his heart and said, "It's now the 4th year of shouting." "Oh no, the 5th year of shouting, right?" The 5th year of shouting was 1232 AD. There were still more than 40 years until 1279, when the Southern Song dynasty was destroyed by the Mongols. In Bai Xiaowen's impression, the war between the Mongols and the Southern Song dynasty had also been going on for more than 40 years. In other words, the Mongols were about to attack. Qianrong didn't understand the meaning of Bai Xiaowen's words. Bai Xiaowen continued, "Sect leader Qin, do you have any understanding of the general situation of the world?" Qianrong was slightly puzzled and said, "General situation of the world? You mean the imperial court? We Taoist sects don't like to pay attention to worldly affairs. Taoist cultivators didn't interfere with worldly affairs. This was a habit of the Taoist sects in the ancient Huaxia. It wasn't just the shouting plain, it was also the same in the plains of the Three Kingdoms. Of course, there were very few Taoist cultivators who used magic to gain wealth and power, and were even conferred the title of imperial preceptor by the ruler. However, such people would be looked down upon by Taoist cultivators with real strength of character. Bai Xiaowen was also mentally prepared for this, so he said, "What about you? How much do you know about the general situation of the world?" Qianrong said, "I know a little about the general situation. In the current Great Song dynasty, there is the Jin kingdom in the north, the Xia kingdom in the west, and the Dali kingdom in the southwest. It is said that in the northern grasslands, there is the Mongol kingdom. All these countries coexist." Bai Xiaowen shook his head. "The Xia kingdom was destroyed a few years ago. The Jin kingdom probably won't be able to hold on for much longer." Qianrong was shocked. Hasn't the Jin kingdom always been stronger than the Song dynasty? Bai Xiaowen thought to himself, it seems that the Taoist cultivators in the Shouting Plain really don't care about national affairs. The Xia kingdom was destroyed by the Mongols in 1227 AD. The war between the Mongols and the Jin kingdom had been going on for decades. The Jin kingdom was destroyed in 1234 AD. In the same year, the war between the Song dynasty and the Mongols broke out. The 13th century AD was recognized as the Mongol century by Chinese and foreign historians. The Mongol kingdom was destroyed countless times, and the Southern Song dynasty was only destroyed in 1279. It could be said that the Southern Song dynasty had lasted for a long time. Of course, this was the spiritual realm's history. It could not be equated with the course of history, especially in a world where demons ran rampant. However, the general direction should be correct. As for the specific details, Bai Xiaowen had already ordered Sig, Delifa, and the other leaders of the 4 major ethnic groups to disguise themselves and enter the Southern Song dynasty's capital, Linan, modern-day Hangzhou, Zhujiang, to spy for information. No matter what, the Mongols would definitely attack the Song dynasty after destroying the Jin kingdom. This was the conclusion that Bai Xiaowen came to. After listening to Bai Xiaowen's analysis, Qianrong fell silent. After a long time, Qianrong said, "So you are worried that the Song dynasty will be destroyed, so you want to build a teleportation formation. You want to help the Song dynasty fight against the Mongols and prevent the destruction of the Song dynasty?" However, for Taoist cultivators, if they interfere too much with the affairs of the moral world, it will be easy for their Taoist heart to be clouded, and it will be difficult for them to improve their cultivation. Lu Wang, you are so talented. Why don't you just cultivate in Shangqing school? To us Taoist cultivators, whoever conquers the world is just a passing cloud. Why do we have to work so hard? You're tuning into the Mythic Realms YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.